Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
I am specifically wearing my UFOs and tacos shirt tonight because I had tacos for dinner, and we're talking some UFOs tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. Walter Bosley, one of my biggest, I guess I'm one of his biggest admirers. He doesn't care about me. He told me he'd throw me in a frozen lake if he could. You know, he's going to be here to talk about the balloons, espionage, spying, UFOs, and everything while he borrows Rihanna's red earmuffs from the Super Bowl halftime show. Yeah. Dirty Filth. Dirty Filth is here for the cartoon as well. Oh, God, we're starting off good tonight. Let's get right to it, shall we? Nightmares in the gold medal position. We got Race Fan taking home the silver and B with a bronze medal tonight. Hi, Kevin, WIPF, Brad Ford, and Michael Morris. How you doing? Penny Van, Brown Dwarf, Lily Pond. Nice to see you guys. And Roy Boy, Vash the Impaler. Vash the Impaler is here. He'll be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio, Kathy Evans, Sweet Donna Spencer, Jack Clark, good to see you. Hi, Nancy Hayes, Adam Lakatos, a great veteran, Dennis Zuniga. Thank you for your service, my man. Chad Palmer is back. Chad will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Be gentle on him. This is first time. Eric Markham, good to see you, buddy. And Dirt Road, thanks for coming on in. Les Paul Holland, Luscious Jewels, Susie B, nice to see you. And who else we have? Pixie Lara, nice to have you back. And who else is here? Hi, Jenny. Hadley, Forrest Louie, good to see you guys. So we continue on with our roll call tonight. Mama Susan, we love you. Yeah, we do. And who else? Esmeralda, thanks for coming on in. And Paramarv, good to see you. We're continuing on with our roll call tonight in our chat room. And George Hernandez, thanks for joining us. W. David Page. And who else do we have? Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. We continue on here with our roll call. And who's up next? Robert Lamoth and Mark Ellens. Good to see you, my man. Chillgasm, Hadley, thanks for coming on in. Millennium, what's up, my friend? And we continue on with roll call here. We got Sensational Sherry, Emmy Woykin, welcome. And Be the Arrow, appreciate it. Ozzy Sue, Forrest Louie, thank you so much for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on a nightly basis. Hi, Nikki in Seattle. Daryl Zerline, good to have you here. Chinese Spy Balloon, I'm here to talk about me. I love it. What a great name. Welcome. Welcome. Ibarata from Singapore makes his triumphant return of 2023. There he is. We're going to open up the chat room right here in Spreaker. And in a second, you'll see Bill WD-40 jump on in there to lube us up for tonight's show, because you got to go in smooth on a show. And you got to be lubed up. Yeah. Forrest Louie, again, thank you for another amazing super chat. Glenn John McEnroe, Marty Burback, how you guys doing? Thanks for joining us. Hi, Tim A., Mr. Catfish, Logan L., and we continue on with our roll call. Pam Harris, thank you for joining us. Eddie Patch, Tim Mothman, how are you? And Zen 2, Mennonite Abe, Vaughn Patrick, good to see you guys. And who else do we have? Sandy B. Welcome back, hon. And who else? We have National Memorial. So Cheeto Richards, formerly Paez, but now Richards. Her husband made her do it. All right. Chris Teen, how are you? Nice to see you back. Metal Gaming, Nancy Thames. Thank you for joining us. Double Day, nice to have you here. Random Guy. Good to have you here, Random Guy. We'll talk to you tonight later on. Nina Williams, welcome to SOR Chat. And Miss Anonymous, thank you. Phil Minervino, good to see you. We got 10 seconds here. Philip Blair, nice to have you here. American, nice to have you here. And yeah, I think we're going to run out of time here. Do me a favor. Horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally from Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out, Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a power show of Chinese balloons tonight. Walter Bosley, former intelligence officer, is here to talk about all the weird things about UFOs, what's going on in the sky above right now, and for some reason, how he was able to get a hold of the earmuffs of Rihanna from the Super Bowl halftime show. I don't get that. Matches her red outfit perfectly and matches Walter's eyes perfectly as well. Then in hour number 3, we're going to try and go to the swamp with Swamp Dweller. Little Timmy Senor will be here for the UFO report. And then probably we'll go to overtime with Random Guy and Tim as well after the radio show. All right, let's nail this on down and get right to it. Walter Bosley spent 20 years in U.S. national security and has now been a specialty publisher approaching 20 years. His first nonfiction book was an investigation into the esoteric engineering of Disneyland, and he has since written several more weird subjects ranging from occult to serial murders to airship mysteries, MKULTRA and the Air Force, lost cities of South America, breakaway civilizations. He's been on TV more than a number of times. He's also been on this show numerous times as well, and they're some of our most popular that we do because he is just one of the most interesting people when it comes to this field of research. Let's bring him on in here. Walter Bosley, it is great to have you back. How did you snag Rihanna's headphones after
my powers of seduction, of course.
That had to be it. That had to be it. Now,
That's right.
For our radio audience, these headphones are absolutely bright red. They're gorgeous. They're gorgeous.
Thank you.
You know, I had originally scheduled you to talk about UFOs for dollars because that was something that I wanted to get into because it just seems like we got all of these groups out there that are really vying for the UFO dollar. And then this past weekend, all hell breaks loose with these, I'm going to call them Chinese drones. Nobody else wants to do it. I'm going to call them Chinese drones that decide to, invade Canada, invade Alaska, invade the lake, the Great Lakes, invade, down there in South Carolina, where you had to pop one there too. I mean, right now, there is a lot going on in the world, Walter. And the one thing I love about you is your versatility where we could get into this. I mean, what's your thoughts on what's going on right now?
I think you nailed it. And actually I'm concerned about what's going on right now. I know that a lot of people are getting excited in the UFO world, particularly the ET hypothesis folks, but there's something more serious going on here. These are, be it Chinese or I doubt it's Russian. I think it's Chinese. That's where I'd, place my bets. But these things were shot down over either right over or having passed over essential military installations, folks. And um, one of two things I see here in that regard. Either we are playing that occasional propaganda game that gets played, where what that means is we know these things are up there all the time because, golly, we have our own up there, I assure you, over their bases and stuff. And they've decided that, okay, we want to put on a show for whatever reason and being tough on China at the same time we're giving them some money back or something. Um, so we're going to shoot these things down. And, China likely expected it a whole lot sooner. So that's why they're not, overtly rattling anything yet. Um, that's a possibility, and I hope that's what it is, the propaganda possibility, because if it's not the propaganda possibility, not to be a doomsayer, then what it means is they are looking close at our bases to gear up for some type of action, either here or somewhere in the world. You don't have surveillance platforms watching another country's bases for any other reason than you're wanting to know their level of readiness. You want to know, their layout. You want to know what's there should you have to tangle with them in a war. So again, I'm hoping this is the propaganda move, because if it's not, we got more serious fish to fry, folks, than some type of disclosure of ET. Because the photos that are out there, and I'm sure we'll get into it, that people are bandying about, there's no provenance there. It's just the same old, where clearly people are photoshopping stuff, or just not very good photos, and on and on. Yeah, that's my assessment.
I
Is
find
the
it very
ET thing
funny.
is just a spin up.
I find it very funny that people are trying to say, that they found the photographs or video of the one that was shot down in the Yukon. If
Uh-huh.
anybody knows anything about the Yukon territory in Canada, it is about the size of Texas. Okay,
Mhm.
Texas has like 40 plus million people.
Yeah.
Uh, Yukon has 43,000 people in the size of Texas.
Yeah.
25,000 of those live in the capital of Whitehorse and
Uh-huh.
the surrounding areas. And where this thing was taken down, you got more chance of seeing it hit a polar bear or a moose than you do a human.
Yeah.
So don't buy any video from the Yukon. It's not real. I
Right.
mean, this is one thing that I did want to talk to you about right off the bat here.
Yeah.
If you've been following Twitter or social media, they have been going nuts about this with
Yeah.
all sorts of information, whether it's fake videos, whether it's, fake information, real information, playing off of what the government is saying from the defense secretary to the ODNI and everybody in between. Are we watching a propaganda game play out probably for the first time in real time here on social media?
I that's the thing about these days is you have to consider that that's being done. And really the first time, who knows? It it the 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 narrative noise from the folks wishing that it were something otherworldly is just as loud as any propaganda that would be out there. So I think propaganda is definitely in the mix, and even if it's just passive propaganda, in that, oh, okay, let the people run with the alien otherworldly craft thing. That way, we won't have to explain the potential danger of the military situation that we're in.
Okay, if that is the case, why do you think those that be in Washington D.C., a number of them, from military brass to politicians, have come out and said, "Look, we can't rule out the extraterrestrial hypothesis here. We can't rule out that this is aliens." I mean, To me, an alien ship doesn't fly in a straight line at 40 miles an hour. And when engaged, just stay flying at 40 miles an hour. I would
Y-
expect that to do something a little bit different.
Sure, yeah, yeah, but I mean, short of we can't really say for sure, but I find that to be more of the overt propaganda coming out of the military folks that, oh, we can't rule out the ETs. That's just to, I think, make the disclosure folks happy, to give them clamoring for that something. And I think it's cynical. I think it's a cynical use, some might say abuse of the community that pays attention to the UFO question. Because aside from whatever's actually going on with these things shot down, whatever they are, I think there are UFOs that are of extraterrestrial origin, right? That's the irony here is, I think they are coming here. And in times like this, I think everybody's looking at the wrong thing. Now, there's another thing to consider. What if there are real UFOs appearing? What if there are real things happening in that regard? And they're pointing to these Chinese surveillance platforms being shot down, and encouraging people to think of them as the extraterrestrials as a diversion from either real UFOs or some other technology. It's more realistic that it might be some other technology. We always have to consider that.
No, and I can understand that. We really don't know what's going on in regards to the whole play. But as someone who has been in the intelligence community,
Mhm.
you have seen all sorts of games being set up, and in
Yeah.
20 years, I'm sure you have your fair share that you can't still to this day talk about due to
Right.
non-disclosure agreements. But the idea that this is being played right in front of Americans, where you have an American general standing at a podium saying, "We don't know if it's extraterrestrial or not." I mean, is that not playing the public for I don't want to say for fools, but more so for fear that this may be happening or may not, or that they refuse to give a proper answer? Because I do know
Mhm.
this from a journalistic standpoint, Walter,
Mhm.
if it is the Chinese, which I believe it is,
Mhm.
they have to be very careful on a world stage of what every word they say in front of the
Yes.
microphone. So could you
Yes.
maybe explain how that works?
Well, first of all, I think, honestly, my initial opinion of the general making a statement like that, that's really just to assuage the people pushing the ET question. That's really just throwing them a bone so he doesn't have to deal any further with that question. I already said that we're not ruling it out. Now let me talk about real world things. You're absolutely right. um, Whenever you do what it appears the Chinese are doing. And don't get me wrong, on a routine basis, we do the same kinds of things. We're doing it right now. All the big powers have these things, high altitude over each other's territory. We've done it since World War II era, post World War II era. Okay, so um, this is why I say look at the reaction of the Chinese. If they don't really rattle any sabers, if they give the diplomatic response, this is something that, we're doing for propaganda to look tough on China, and they probably expected these things to be detected, encountered, and shot down already. And since it's just a routine effort or program they're doing, they're not going to get upset. Um, if it's not, if it's the situation to be more concerned about, say they're scoping us to determine where to strike or if to strike. You're absolutely right. In that situation, they've got to be real careful how they appear to the rest of the world because, not everybody is on their side. And even those who might be financially, socioeconomically on their side, so to speak, might not appreciate what appears to be an overt military threat. And then there's the issue of maybe these things are the weapons, because bioweapons could easily be rained down upon us from a platform like that, that high. And who knows what it's already rained down on us. So they have to be very careful if they're playing games like that, because yeah, they're walking a fine line where they look like the aggressors that they would be in that situation. And they don't want to look like that. They would want every ally they could have on their side. um so yes, yeah, they do have to be careful how they would respond to that if they are doing something nefarious.
But on the flip side, countries like China, Iran, Iraq, Russia, they've always
Mhm.
kind of beaten to their different drummer, like North
Yeah.
Korea. They beat to
Mhm.
their own drummer. You never hear anything like you did in the 70s and early 80s about Laos or and the Khmer Rouge, or you heard about the atrocities of Vietnam. But since then, it seems both countries have kind of, or countries like that seem to have, kind of found their way, even though we may not agree with their politics. They seem to have opened their doors a little bit, become a little bit more friendly, and realizing that maybe, butchering 20 million people like the Khmer Rouge did wasn't a good idea. You know, Not saying it isn't still happening, but it's more covered up. And I guess where I'm going with this is we don't hear a lot about those type of countries anymore. But the big ones, North Korea, China, Iran,
Mhm.
Iraq,
Yeah.
Russia, the ones that really publicly beat to their own drummer, they're just really seeming to not give a care about what's going on in the world or how it affects the economy or anything. I mean, you look at Russia right now, their economy is tanking. We think we have it bad here with inflation right now, but their economy's going into the gutter.
Yeah, um, there's some margin with that, because we never really know, the verifiability, I'm missing the word, of our news sources on Russia. We get conflicting sources, but it's certainly not helping their situation, the conflicts and such. But that, I'll tell you, with Russia right now, particularly, let's say the Ukraine, the hands of the US are not exactly clean in that situation. It's just so
Very true.
ugly that it's hard to it's hard to really say, what's going on with that situation. But I think, from big picture, from my perspective, and I could be wrong, this is just a perspective, this is my opinion. I'm in that camp that worries about world conflict coming, because it has been, we're pushing a century since World War II, and it's not that the world has been without wars in the meantime, but they haven't been major world conflicts like World War II was. And there's always that, that sense of being overdue, because we know that just natural socioeconomic and political forces just kind of make these things happen organically. But when you add the nefarious political financial sources that quite frankly make money and gain power off of conflict, being in the mix, who's pushing for this world conflict to happen, and we, the people of the world, end up really paying the prices for it. We certainly, pay the taxes for it. So it's I think we're in a really scary period of time, and right now, and they're all too happy to have us be thinking about UFO, ETs and the Super Bowl and what have you. This is one of those times, and there's a lot of people who are more than willing to embrace that, and I think that might be, because under the surface they're afraid. For some people, it's a lot easier to think of these things as alien craft, rather than what they appear to be, and that's Chinese military platforms scoping vital North American military installations, which is exactly what they would strike. So again, we come back to this because this is in the mix of what the world's being pushed to.
With 3.5 minutes to go here, are you then surprised, because I sure as heck wasn't, that all of a sudden China is announcing that they now have some sort of balloons floating over their area that they are going to probably be shooting down? Is this just the big balloon game now?
Yeah, there's going to be tit for tat. It's okay. You're going to shoot down ours. We're going to shoot down yours. And it's this. I mean, everybody remembers the schoolyard fights. Everybody remembers when you're in school, when the girls fought, it was always more exciting because the girls throw down. The guys stand there for 20 minutes, bumping chests, going, come on, come on, come on. And that's what's going on when we're doing tit for tat, shooting down each other's surveillance things. It's the equivalent of the puffing up your chest and crowing. And let's get real cynical. This could all be theater for the masses. There could be no intention of a major world conflict, but it's all this theater, our team versus their team kind of stuff, that we know goes on.
But should we really be surprised? Look,
No.
espionage, spying, balloons, this has been going on for decades. So why now are we blowing them out of the sky?
Because it's the act du jour, because we don't want to blow more expensive, more extensive hardware out of the sky. In other words, you get real cynical here. Okay, China, we'll shoot your balloons down, then you shoot ours down, because for whatever reason, maybe they don't want to shoot the real tech that means a lot more. It's something to consider.
Well, the other thing to consider too is the amount of money involved.
Mhm.
Any war between China and the US, we're talking trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Trillions
Mhm.
that end tomorrow, because half of everything in the US is made and Canada is made in China now, if not more.
Yeah.
And trust me, it bothers me when, as a Canadian, when I see hockey gear built in China, made
Yeah.
in China. Okay, car parts, you name it, computer chips. That's why we have a car shortage in North America, because of the
Yeah.
computer chips. Okay, and there was only 2 plants that were building those computer chips, and one went down in fire, and the other one closed due to COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that China controls within the North American economy. Never mind the debt that they've bought.
Yeah, and when you have a state like California, for example, that would rather see industry die, and everyone go down a hole, rather than to disturb a field mouse. Nobody out here is that stupid and naive. They know that politics are being played with environmental issues out here. They do it all the time, and they do it to destroy commerce in this state. They do it to destroy commerce, and that's what China loves. Chinese intelligence and forces put their money behind these environmentalist movements and radical ideas because they know it destroys American industry. And when you destroy North American industry, be it you guys, be it us down here, even be it Mexico, then you're seriously reducing a capability to fight back, either economically or militarily.
Walter Bosley, former member of the intelligence community, author, researcher, owner of Rihanna's headphones from the Super Bowl. Oh, we're having fun tonight. We're going to continue. Talk a little espionage and more. Chinese balloons on Spaced Out Radio when we return right after this break. Stay tuned. So we have a number of new listeners who are tuned in right now. If this is your first time tuning into Spaced Out Radio, welcome. Thank you. do us a favor. It really helps with our algorithms. If you could give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe. We are here 7 days a week for your listening entertainment. Also, because we are a hybrid program, we are live on a podcast right now. We are live on YouTube and Twitch, but we are live to break right now for our radio stations. We broadcast out to 7 different terrestrial radio stations now as we continue to grow our format, and we have to take breaks every 30 minutes in order to appease their time restraints that they need for their commercial breaks. So that's why you guys get a little bit of a behind the scenes look at everything that is going on. And yeah, we really do appreciate it. And so thank you. And Dirty Filth, if you're wondering who the guy is down here who's painting right now, this is our resident cartoonist, Dirty Filth. He has webbed feet, and he likes to swim. That's why he shaves the rest of his body. And he's also just an amazing cartoonist. And we're going to zoom on in. Hi, Dirty. How you doing there, buddy?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm good. I am good. This is where you talk, Filth.
Hi.
Hi. He's a man of few words. But his hands do the talking. And they do the talking well. Right now he's putting on a little bit of bronzer on there or copper.
Orange.
How the hell is that orange?
I don't know. What do they call it here? It's actually Aussie Red Gold by Danielle Smith Paints.
Very nice.
Cut the center open so I can get to it, but
it's the color of orichalcum, the element of Atlantis.
Oh, very nice pull there, Walter.
Yes.
Very nice pull.
Full of useless information like Cliff on Shears.
I'm that way when it comes to hockey. Yeah.
I got to tell you, the first time I went to a hockey game was an AHL minor league in Baltimore. And I loved it immediately because my buddy I went with was from Chicago. We were in training in the Maryland area with the FBI, and he was a big Blackhawks fan. So he said, hey, let's go to a hockey game. So we went to a skipjack game, and he said, come on, we got to set up high at these minor league games. And he explained why. He says, because the puck is probably going to fly out of the rink and hit somebody. And sure enough, it did. Well, they carried someone out unconscious who got hit with a puck. And and these guys, but I'll tell you, the stuff that if people think NHL is rough and tumble, minor league, they can beat the hell out of each other and not see a penalty box.
Minor league hockey is way better. And you know what's even better than AHL hockey? Is if you ever get the chance to come up here or even into Seattle or Washington or Oregon and watch the Western Hockey League, it's major junior hockey. Yeah. Oh, those kids are busting their asses. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right. When I went to some NHL games, I thought this is like watching golf compared to the minor league guys.
Can't stand the NHL anymore. They've ruined it. I'm just going to read out some names here. Hi, Pen Man. I got to get caught up in the chat room. I'm still a few minutes behind here. Hi, Nicole Sakic. How are you? And who else do we have here? Gailey C. Nice to see you. And let's see. I'm almost Zen 2. Good to have you back. Phil Minervino. Thank you for the super chat, my man. It's always good to have some Phil Minervino in your chat room. And Cold Doikes, welcome to SOR chat from Denmark. Oh, it's Renee. How are you? And Scowling Greg O'Brien, welcome back. Deb, thank you for that super chat. Along with Louis times 3, Phil and Deb. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think I'm almost caught up here. Oh, Melinda 5. Thank you, Melinda. Melinda will be on next Monday. We're going to do a panel on this part. Otis Trailer, good to see you, bud. Warden Dragon, nice to have you here. There's Melinda's super chat. And we are caught up. And remember, the super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you so much. Our store is open on our website. And I will be at UFOCon 2023, March 19th through 17th through 19th. Come join us. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag, and follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. We are continuing on with Walter Bosley, former intelligence member, and now he's an author, researcher, and does a bunch of fun things with his fingers, as in typing on the keyboard, writing books, reports, and everything that goes along with it. He's one of the best, in my opinion. Walter, welcome back.
Thank you, Dave. Always good to be here.
There's a lot of talk over the last 72 to 96 hours about espionage. Whether or not this is an act of war with these balloons coming over our area. Is this, considering that the United States, for years and, for over 60 years has flown the U-2 over hotbed areas, or the SR-71 or whatever replaced the SR-71, never mind the countless satellites from every country up in space that do spying. So is this really an act of war?
And don't forget our own balloons. I mean, we I think mastered the giant surveillance balloon before China did. Okay, as an act of war, here's the thing. Generally, it always can be. It isn't always, and it's usually not. It's usually just a way of keeping your eye on your adversaries, on your known foes and enemies, and to a little extent on your friends, just to make sure they're still friends, or in a protective way, on their behalf. But it can be, depending upon how intrusive it is and what the espionage is digging into. And what's the obvious thing that this technology needs to keep an ie on, or is deployed to keep an eye on, is military readiness of an adversary, of the target nation. But at the same time, if you go beyond routine, meaning beyond what your adversaries are expecting you to do, then it can be an act of war. Yes, particularly if it's one of those things that is intended to be discovered, to become overt. That can be a provocation. That in itself can also be a provocation, in the sense that, we're going to aggressively send these balloons over. So while you're focusing on the balloons, you're not seeing the other thing that's coming at you, hypothetically. So I know that sounds vague, but espionage can be an overt act of war. Most of the time, it isn't. For what it's worth, the specialty I had in the Air Force is one of the U.S. Air Force's, one of the Air Force OSI's, if not the number one wartime mission. And it has to do with, running counter-espionage operations. So there you go. There's counter-espionage operations, which, can be very much an overt active war. It just really, again, it sounds vague, but it just all depends on a bunch of pieces coming together at the same time or the right time. Now, remember also the target nation at any time will, will apply their own criteria to what an active war is. Okay. Um, any nation can decide, well, any surveillance platforms monitoring our military installations, well, we will take that as an active war. So that's why we have to do these things on the sly, covertly, because we never know when a target nation is going to play that card. Yeah, we know you've been up there, we assume you've been up there, but you know what? Now we're going to declare that we're tired of it, and we're just going to use that as a means of carrying out our military objectives on you. So this is the eggshell game that gets played anytime you're doing any kind of collections, be it technical collections or human intelligence. It's just it's a high wire act sometimes.
And this happens both in peacetime and wartime.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's in wartime, it can become more overt. It can become obviously much more aggressive. So that's why if you're wanting to see the signs of us, we're about to go from peacetime to wartime, pay attention to, how much adversarial surveillance technology is being detected, being revealed, because that is an indicator.
One of the indicators that I have noticed is the amount of differences that is being spread around social media, especially about what these things are. We know the first one that crashed into or that was knocked out of the sky by the F-22 in South Carolina. We know that was hit by an AIM-9 missile, or an AIM-9X missile, pardon me, specialized missile. The next three, we're hearing they didn't have balloons on them. Then we're hearing they did have balloons on them. Then we're hearing that they are a bunch of metal wrapped in balloon type of materials. I mean, how do we find out now? Oh, then there's been rumors that they can't find the crash sites of where these things crashed into. There's a lot going on here that is going on. Yet we hear that they know what these objects are. Well, if you don't know where they are, how do you know what these objects are?
Well, you could be, an SR-71, which the Soviets certainly knew eventually what it was. If it crashed somewhere in Siberia, they certainly knew it was an SR-71, but they might not be able to find it. So that's an easy one. There's also, when people think of balloons, they think of only, I think, didn't one of these go down in the ocean, or Lake Michigan or something?
Lake Huron.
Lake Huron, and you saw it being, pulled up in the water. People think of balloons as, a traditional balloon. A balloon can be a semi-rigid or rigid construction, hull or object, that has flight, lighter than air capabilities. And so therefore, semi-rigids can take all manner of shapes, that can look like, it looked like a flying saucer, or it looked like a cylinder. There are these objects that are shaped like that, and some of them are immense. Some of these, the light materials, ultralight materials out there, they can shape these things almost like anything that they want to. But just because they may not be able to find where it went down doesn't mean they didn't know what it was. Another issue is maybe they don't want to draw attention to where they are retrieving the thing. They could know very well where it is, but they want to feign ignorance because they don't want people out there getting in the way of a search, or they don't want people seeing up close the details of what the thing is. There could be a number of reasons why they tell us, oh, gee, we don't know where it is, or, oh, gee, we don't know exactly what it is. Another reason why they would say we don't know what it is simply, believe it or not, that, for example, they wouldn't want the Chinese to know how much they know about their aerial surveillance platform technology. They want to play this public game of ignorance, because maybe the means by which they know that might endanger a very valuable human intelligence source. That's why they'll lie about knowledge of technology very often, is because we have some type of inside source that's deep inside, that's maybe on a high level, that the only way we could know certain things is because that individual in their own ranks, and then it'll get that person killed. Okay. In the days of the Cold War, it would get our insiders in the Soviet Union. It would just get them killed. It would get them executed. So when you hear them, oh golly, we don't know what it is, or whatever, that more often than not is they're protecting a valuable human intelligence source, or a valuable technical source that they have in place, that they don't want to sacrifice.
Which does make sense, okay? Because in the end, this is a big game.
Mhm.
And I think we all have to, whether you're civilian or not, you have to realize that this is a big game of who has more chest hair than the other country.
Yeah.
And let's face it, it's going to continue on. It's been happening for decades. It's going to continue on for decades until something homogenized happens on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. But the idea that, people are freaking out that these drones, I'm going to call them drones,
Sure.
are all different sizes and shapes. To me, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
They're like, well, all of them aren't the same. They're all different. They all look like UFOs. That's great. That's great. But wouldn't it be best to have these different type of shapes and sizes of drones in order to see what gets detected the least?
Yeah, sure. They're testing the various models. They're testing just that. Also, let's not discount the possibility that the Chinese on purpose, Americans, they're UFO crazy. We'll make all our surveillance platforms look like, flying saucers and things from, the movies, because there will be enough people that'll fall for it. See, it looks like a flying saucer, therefore it is. And and they could be just doing that on purpose. But you bring up a very good point. It could be that they test various models and shapes to see, just like you said, what works best, what's easier to hide above the clouds or in a cloud, what shape disappears with altitude, right? At least from the eye or camera lenses, the best. Or what shapes aren't are radar stealthy. We're applying stealth to aircraft, we're applying stealth to landcraft and naval seacraft. Well, you can apply stealth to these semi-rigid aerial platforms as well.
You really can. But I mean, I really do believe, though, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that with the technology today getting smaller and smaller, you don't need a Zeppelin sized balloon
No.
in order to be carrying a lot of impressive cargo that's going to be
Right.
picking up intelligence or sending signals with photographs to satellite image for satellites.
Right. Well, take look how transistor technology has developed to the point where it's like paper thin, right? And the circuitry is tiny, tiny, microscopic. You get into nanotechnology too. Think how lightweight that is. You're absolutely right. It doesn't have to be anything, like you say, colossal or gigantic anymore. It can be literally 10 feet across, or even smaller. And of course, you have to consider withstanding the altitude and the wind currents and blah 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 and all that. But you bring up a very good point. These things can be all manner of sizes and shapes because of the technology we have at hand.
One of the big questions that's been coming around, and it's been asked in our chat room already, is about the
Mhm.
propulsion systems. Are these types of balloons or craft, whatever you want to call them, are they reliant on the jet stream, or do you think they are actually being propelled by some sort of electromagnetic frequency or something along those lines?
I think there's likely both, and some type of propulsion technology, as well as taking advantage of the jet stream. Why not? Because you take advantage of the jet stream, and that's less energy that your propulsion system has to expend. So you design the thing, you set it out on a course where the jet stream will carry it to the general area it needs to go, and then you turn on your propulsion system to where you can more finely move the thing where you need it to be, aim the lens, so to speak, where it needs to be, or God forbid, where you're going to drop your payload, particularly your bioweapon payload.
Right. Right. So how does that work for those of us who aren't very scientifically or weatherly inclined? How does a jet stream work to go? Would it go right across the Arctic? Would it and then come down? Or where would they launch it? Would they launch it from a plane? Would they launch it from a boat? Where do you think?
I would think logically, they would have some that can be launched from aircraft, and that would be your smaller ones. Depending upon where they launch it from, at sea, they might stand the chance of being, detected possibly. So, maybe from, a ground launch, they would still have to be careful of our surveillance stuff. So, if I had to guess, and I'm guessing here because this is not my expertise, if I had to guess, I would say the high altitude aircraft is really the best way because they can pop that out of that aircraft, and high enough to where then it gets where they need it to be, and then they can activate whatever they need to activate to make it operational. But I would say for China, doing it from high altitude aircraft would be the best. But then again, that's a wild guess on my part because I'm not an expert on that particular thing.
But we also have to realize too that China doesn't have a lot of aircraft outside of
Right.
their brand new stealth fighter that's
Right.
just come out the last couple of years that could get to any sort of altitude or any sort of surveillance from a higher area that say the U-2 or whatever replace the SR-71 that's flying around now could get to.
As far as we know, remember, this goes back then to what I was saying about, okay, we have to trust our official sources that say, no, nay, nay, China doesn't have this. But then again, they might very well indeed have some small capacity in that regard, but we don't want them to know we know it for both strategic reasons and for the reasons of protecting the source that led us to that knowledge. See, so again, we can't trust what our officials say we don't know. We can't necessarily accept that because of those reasons.
Well, do you think that they do? I mean, we know the Russians really haven't had a high altitude aircraft since the MiG-25, which was literally built to bring down the U-2 and the SR-71.
Right. If you can launch something to the moon, what other capabilities do you have? I bring this up, people have criticized me when I've said, hey, they say, well, how could we put people up in space without the public knowing about it? Okay. Well, for instance, look at the Air Force launches rockets from Vandenberg Air Force Base in front of everybody who lives in California knows when they launch something. Now, not everybody involved with launching that rocket knows what's on the payload. Okay. It would be very easy, okay, to put a sealed payload with a human crew up on one of those rockets and launch them into space. The launch is known publicly. And if people scream, oh, the telemetry signal for the life support systems. Come on. If you don't think by 2023, we haven't mastered masking communications for life support systems, you're naive. And then there's always the guy that says, well, my Uncle Ted was a security troop, Air Force security troop at Vandenberg, and he says no way. Well, I hate to tell you, but your Uncle Ted, Sergeant Snuffy, who was a security guard, ain't gonna be briefed in on what's on the payloads either. So my point is, we certainly have the means to have been putting even people, personnel, and all sorts of things up in space, because the classified payloads, they could be doing the same thing with, sure, rocket launches we're aware of, but who knows what they're capable of once they get up there. So, and again, we could very well know exactly what they're doing, but then it comes back to, we don't want to say because our source for that will be compromised. So again, it comes back to, we, the folks out here, are the mushrooms, right? Living in the dark and fed fertilizer, because we're just not in the position to know what they don't really know.
Walter Bosley, former intelligence officer, is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got about 3 minutes, Walter, before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. When you have public unrest the way that this subject is really taken off within the media, I mean, does this play into an intelligence officer's hands, or does it just complicate things because of all the different messages that are getting out there?
A good intelligence agent, intelligence officer, and intelligence program manager is going to optimize the circumstances as much as possible at every turn. Now, it depends upon the individual situation as to whether they will be able to optimize that. But there's usually a way to turn that in your favor from the intelligence perspective, even if it's just perception management,
because it's part of the mind game.
Yeah, it's part of what you're projecting. It's part of what you want to keep your adversary guessing at. Now, the brand I did, I wasn't involved with any nefarious lying to the public. Okay, everything I did was involved with what was their lying and undercover stuff and perception management. Oh, heck yeah, all the time. But it was truly aimed at the adversary. It was aimed, before the wall came down, at the Soviets, and then, when I really got into CE ops, it was the early days of the post-Soviet Russia, the Russian military and their version of the I think the new KGB was the SVRR or something. It changed. The acronyms changed a couple of times during those years, but it was always ultimately aimed at keeping the enemy on its toes. Okay. And always assuming they're not naive. They're going to know you're playing a perception management game, but they're not always going to know what you're hiding. Okay. So it's like, we all know the game. We're playing the game on each other. The trick is, what is the shell game actually hiding? That's what you're trying to figure out,
And what do you mean by that? Is we got about a minute to go.
Just that when you're playing perception management games, it's just that you're just kind of, you're trying to shelter over what either your true objective is, or what the asset is, or what the technology is that you're trying to protect, so that ultimately, if it does come to military conflict, you've got your hammer, and your hammer's not compromised, so that when you get into it, you can pull that hammer out, and hopefully it'll be unexpected, so that when you bring it down on the enemy, you've got that initial strike, that upper hand. So the perception management game is usually played to either make the enemy go in the wrong direction, or just not be quite sure what you have and how effective it might be.
Our resident spy, Walter Bosley, former intelligence agent, now a researcher, author extraordinary. You can find all of his books online. We are going to continue with this update on the latest news regarding the shoot down of drones. Yes, we are both of the opinion that the aliens have not landed. No, the aliens have not landed, people. Keep your tinfoil on the rack. It's not needed yet. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Oh, Susie thinks I have nice hair today. Thank you, Susie. I had to do it this way to compete with Walter.
Yeah, particularly after I shaved my head for my movie some months back, and it grew back in.
You're looking stellar, my friend. Looking
We're
stellar.
both looking good, Dave. We're both
that's
just a
true.
couple of what they call silver foxes, right? I mean, hey,
that is very true. That is very true. Some of us more silver than others. But yes. All right. I'm just going to quickly step away here for a second. We'll turn it over to Dirty Filth. He's going to let you know about how his art is going to go in Vegas and for our fan party, and then where you can find his calendar and his book. And Walter, if you want, you can hang out, or we'll put you back in the green room. Up to you.
Put me back in the green room for a couple of minutes, or however long you.
All right, buddy. There you go. You're in the green room. I'll be right back, Dirty.
All right, I'll do that plug thing, Dave. If you would like a copy of my art, or if you want to buy a calendar or a book, or even just send me a nice email, just go to filthy.com, FYLTHY.com, and you can go to Vegas, and I'll just give you artwork if I find you, or you find me, one of the two. I'll have the whitest dome in the entire building. I got like 10,000 art cards. Well, 10,000 metric art cards. So, oh look, there's that guy lurking in the background. Unbelievable. Yeah, come to Vegas. I'll give you artwork. I'll tell you some interesting stories. Yeah. Sounds Vegas or bust, says Pixie Laura. I set up another monitor so I could read the chat room better instead of trying to stare through my little lens thing. Yes. Kira will also be there. Dave will be there too. And Merle's going to be there. They're going to hate us because they're going to have like all these Merles going off at all different times. It's going to be just absolutely insane. I feel sorry for those poor guys. It's going to get banned. Super Duke. We're going to get kicked out of the Golden Nugget forever. Reason, too many Merles. Also, I'm going to bring a couple original drawings if anybody wants to buy them. And otherwise, I got like 10,000 art cards. I was handing them out to even random strangers on the elevator. And then some guy started talking about being in the Navy, and some of his friends seen weird things. And I was like, oh, you should email me. And he never did, of course, but he's probably just pulling my leg. Oh, it'll definitely be fun. I think I'm probably going to draw cartoons in between everybody doing their little half-hour break or whatever. There's a fairly good possibility that Dave might twist my arm for a slice of pizza. I'll probably just be sitting there drawing cartoons anyway, so. Oh, I don't know. I don't think I need gambling money. Donate to a local animal shelter instead. That's a much better way to spend your money. Unless you're that Enzo guy who won like $1 billion in Vegas the last time. What a guy. I actually put 20 in the machine and I came out with 13 or $15 on top, so it wasn't too bad. And I forgot about it when I got home, and I had $15 American in my pocket, and I took it to the thing and got it exchanged. So I had like $97 Canadian, rounded down.
Hey, Filth.
Hey, Dave, how's it going? Well, I've been sitting here rambling to the crowd since you've been gone.
Good. We like it when you do that.
I told them if they come to Vegas, then there's a high probability they'll get some artwork.
Absolutely. Well, we do our best, and you're going to do your best because you're pretty awesome.
I only do the best, Dave.
I know. We appreciate it. Feel like we should break into song.
No.
No? Hi, Gregory 777. How you doing?
I'll hit the mosh pit, though.
Hey, why not? I'll join you. We got 319 people watching. This is really good. Really good. Thank you, everybody, for tuning us on in, especially if you're new. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button or the thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. It helps with our algorithms. Thank you to Louie with a hat trick, Phil, Deb, Melinda, Philip, and Susie B for the amazing super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. I will be at UFOCon 2023 in San Francisco in a few short weeks. Come join me. Get your tickets at UFOCon2023.com. And here we go with the second hour, everybody.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate you listening on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Zoilism. Zoilism is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with our good friend Walter Bosley. He spent 20 years in the intelligence community. Now he's an author, researcher. You can find all of his books on Amazon. Walter, thank you so much for joining us. We very much appreciate it, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I like being here. This is a lot of fun.
We are going to get to some audience questions here.
Okay.
In just a little bit of time here, but I want to ask you, in regards to public panic, should the public be panicking right now about this entire game that's going on, or should we just be taking it as it is the highlighted topic of the news for the day? And, there's a lot of other things we need to be worrying about, like what's happening in Ohio right now.
Right. Well, no one should ever panic. No matter what's happening, try to curb panic, because panic makes any situation worse. As far as worrying is useless, because it's just self-destructive. As far as being concerned, that should be part of the plethora of what people have going through their minds right now, because we don't know what the intention of these platforms that have been shut down are. We just don't know for sure. So I would be concerned. Yes, I'm concerned personally about these shoot downs in what the intention was, until we learn more.
Okay, so the intentions, the chances of us knowing what these intentions are or what they are all about really seem like a moot point, because the U.S. government or the Canadian government, since they're both involved in this right now, are not going to give up details, even if what they found is a drone or a balloon or
Right.
whatever it may be. So how do we find out information if they're not going to tell us what they have?
Well, you bring up a very good point. Yeah, they could very well know or get a better have a much better grasp on what the intention of China was in having these things up there where they did and when they did. The downside to that is not knowing what their intention is until it's obvious if it's a bad intention, and that would mean some type of strike on our mainland. Um, this is one of the potential reasons for those things being put over our skies is again going back to gathering the intel on the readiness of our important military bases. um, I'll tell you right now, the intention of the Chinese could have been that these things were shot down, because what they could have measured was the response time, the level of response and the response time of our fighter craft and what have you. And that's very valuable for strategic purposes, because then it tells you how much force to go in with. It tells you maybe, what kind of attack to wage, what to expect when you do wage that attack, how much time you'll have to drop the bombs or drop the bioweapons between the time your platform is detected and the American or Canadian jets can get to it and shoot it down. The intention could be, yeah, of course we're going to get shot down, but this is giving us every step of the way valuable data we need for an actual attack. And that could be the stage we're at. And this could explain why our military allows it, the idea that it could be UFOs from another world to be encouraged, to keep people's minds off of what really may be going on or what they're seriously concerned is going on. And, not to stir up fear, or the panic, which I said should be avoided. But you know what? We also got to be honest. We live in a world which war just keeps happening, and will continue to happen. And no society, no civilization, no country wants to think that we're anywhere near a war when wars break out. Everybody's kind of going about their business until the balloon drops, so to speak, no pun intended. So yeah, on the cynical side, the unfortunate side is that could have been the exact intention of these things, just to know what to expect when they do send an attack. um it's just something
But
that's got to be considered.
what kind of information could these be looking for? Like you mentioned, response time from the Air Force. We
Yeah,
know that a couple of them, they were followed, they were being watched. Is
sure.
is that all preparation just to kind of screw with whomever launched these? With, like, we assume it's the Chinese. Is that just to kind of screw with them to say, hey, maybe we've been watching you for 6 days, but we're
Mhm.
getting you on day 7 because we're tired of playing games,
Yeah,
rather than getting it right off the bat.
sure, that could very well be, a part of it, and to show, see, we know you're up there, we can keep an eye on you, we can take you out at any time. But at the same time, maybe they're trying to ascertain as soon as possible and as extensively as possible as to what this thing actually is, as far as what kind of payload it could be carrying. Is it showing, is there any possibility that it is some type of weapon, be it a bioweapon or an EMP type of technology? That could be at the same time the reason for following it before shooting it down. A lot of people complain, well, and yeah, it doesn't look good, when they allowed that initial one, right, to fly a certain path over the United States, flying over several military installations in major cities. It could be that they were, of course, were capable of shooting it down anytime, but they were collecting. They were using every means they had to collect on the thing. And should it have given any indication of dropping any kind of weapon or initiating any kind of attack, be it bio or electromagnetic, okay, shoot it down at that moment. But yeah, it's a game that's played on multiple levels, and from our perspective, as citizens, we we're our lives are in the hands of these people that are playing these games. And I don't mean that necessarily in a nefarious way, because I was one of those involved in that game, and I assure you, it was my intent was, I was playing the game so my fellow American citizens outside the game didn't have to. That's the way a lot of the people, the worker bees in that community, we look at it that way. We want, just like Canadian citizens, we want the free citizens of the world to not have to worry about these things. We want them to enjoy their Super Bowl. We want them to enjoy having their barbecues and living their lives and raising their kids without worry, okay, that they're going to be attacked. So we play this intelligence game, to keep on top of what any potential attacker is doing. And that's really the heart and soul of the people doing this stuff. Now, where it becomes nefarious, as we know, is when we get things like the industry involved, right? The legendary, nefarious, again, using that word, military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned the people of the United States of, and, has proven time and again that because money is made off of war, they don't care so much about playing their games for the protection of people. They're playing their games to determine what technology that they're going to offer, that they're going to make a lot of money on, but the standard intel, agent, officer, operative, that person is doing it with true and good intentions, usually. So
That's what you hope.
yeah, that's what you hope. And of course, look, there's always bad cops, right? This is what I say as a former federal agent. There's a reason we have internal affairs departments, divisions in police departments and federal agencies, because you're right. There are people who are given these positions of trust, in that case, a badge and a gun, and they are bad people. They turn out to be not trustworthy, and, they turn out to betray everything that they're supposed to be doing. And yeah, you're right. That happens. That happens way more often than it should. Not quite as often, thank God or whatever, as people might think. But again, it's the world we live in. The world we live in is not perfect, and there are bad players.
I think that's a fair comment. I do want to ask you, in those days where they are probably scanning whatever craft these are,
Yeah.
are they, or does the United States military or whatever they have scanning it have the power to say, okay, we are detecting this type of gas with inside of it, or it looks like it may have bombs tied up underneath it. Are they doing that? Are they getting close enough to maybe scan these beforehand?
I don't know all the specifics on that, and remember, my information goes only on Air Force stuff in particular, ended in my direct access to that information ended in 1999, summer of 99, when I came off active duty and went into counterterrorism stuff. But based on what I knew back then, I'm going to say, yes, of course we do. So imagine what we probably have now in the 24 years since I've been out. But I wouldn't be able to tell you the specifics of that. But I think that would be an easy yes.
Yeah, I would think that they would, or have the technology to beam it up with a laser to try and figure it out. That would just make sense. That would just make complete sense regarding it. Okay, the idea that a lot of these have been brought down in areas where there is little population. The South Carolina one crashed into the ocean. We have the one that was crashed into Lake Huron. Alaska and the Yukon have very few people in those areas where these objects would have been taken down. When you look at where these were taken down in low populous areas, is that on purpose to save people or to keep the secret?
It's both. It's obvious physical safety. I mean, it's always better to shoot something down right over an open body of water rather than a populated area. But it also, at the same time, it helps keep people from seeing exactly what it is. So again, that goes back to what you do or don't want your adversaries to know. But when you don't want the public to know, to see what these things are, it's because you don't want the looky-loos. You don't want the looky-loos who are going to talk about what it is they're seeing. Also, there might be something in the technology that makes it a hazard, some type of hazardous material. You got to consider the hazmat aspect of today's technology. So it's to protect the people and to also keep something as undercover as possible.
All right. One of the big things that a lot of people have been talking about lately, and this is one of the things I want to get into before we get to some audience questions, is Project Bluebeam has been thrown around like anything over the last number of days.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, or maybe I should explain what Project Bluebeam is to a lot of people who may not know. Basically, it is a project that put out where a lot of things are said to happen, but don't really happen. And they're more for false flag type events to try and throw people off in order to get support for any type of action that happens. I think I hit that kind of good there. But, your thoughts on whether or not this could be a Project Bluebeam type event, or if the conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat wearing crowd is, pushing this a little too far.
Well, there's definitely some of that going on. There's always the people that want to spin this kind of stuff into something that it's not. But here's the thing: you can gauge to what extent the scenarios you laid out are potentially true or not. Now, if we're shooting down something that we put up there to say, look what the Chinese have up there and they're going to attack us and such, you need to get behind this military action that we want. Well, if it's absolutely not true, I guarantee you the Chinese are going to come out and say, oh, no way, that wasn't us. You're playing perception games with your own people. That's one reaction they can have. It could also be another version of that could be, as I said before, this goes on all the time. And for perception and propaganda, we've decided now to shoot them down now when we've known they've been up there all along. Okay. And that could be also to stir up, hey, we need to get into this military action against this adversary because look what they're doing. It could be that as well. And then the Chinese, let's say we did that, they wouldn't deny if it was their stuff. They're not going to come out and deny it was their stuff, but they're going to see the spin we're putting on it, if that's the case. And then the other choices of doing that, as I described already, is to protect our sources of knowledge and again, just show off something we have, to counter these things. So and you can't always, as your commenter there said, you can't actually trust China is telling the truth about their balloon sightings. That's true. That's absolutely true, because they might not want to want something revealed about what they've put up there. So they don't want to say too much about it, just in case we haven't figured something out, or to deflect us from looking for anything else As you see, it's a much layered game.
Okay, being a layered game,
Mhm.
China was very quick to condemn the United States when the balloon was shot down, the original one, the first one.
Yeah.
They were quick to send out a message. But these last three, they've been completely silent on. Why do you
Mhm.
think that is?
Well, again, there could be multiple reasons. Maybe they were thinking that the first one was going to be the only one. So that was their response. But then we, kept shooting these things down, and now they may be in a position of, oh, yikes, okay, they're not going to take this off of us anymore. Maybe these things have been up there but weren't being applied as aggressively until now, and that's why we shot them down. And I've painted kind of a dark, grim picture of what they could have been doing in what this could be forecasting. Let's look at the bright side. It could be that maybe the response they saw was demonstrating, our force capability, our readiness, would not be in their favor. I mean,
True.
so they're kind of hoping this goes away, is what I'm trying to say. Their silence could be that they're just hoping it go, okay, you got us. We want this to go away. But we can only guess.
Okay, so, but would they not take responsibility for their own technology?
Well, yeah. Why do that when it's already been shot down, and the country that shot it down is saying what they're saying about it, and it's kind of like a cat that's out of the bag, so just on to the next thing. Or again, maybe their sources tell them that we haven't figured out everything about that technology, and they certainly don't want to give too much away. Um, you know, uh, Perhaps they don't want to cop to it to make us wonder who actually sent it. If it was that deep of a program, if it was a program classified deeply enough by them, it could be that, well, they're playing the "it's not ours" game. You look at the Russians. Maybe it's them. Again, from our perspective, we can only guess. But those are the possibilities. Those are the possible realities from my perspective as a guy who was in that world.
Speaking of Project Bluebeam here for a minute, comedian Louis C.K. has tweeted out recently that the UFOs were a distraction from Ohio. Ohio is a distraction from the Nord Stream pipeline. All of it was created by Project Bluebeam, and new one world order is coming if we don't stop it. I mean, this is the stuff that people are reading on the internet, man.
Yeah, and using to back up conclusions that are being jumped to. Well, I saw this on the internet, or hey, this guy says, and it sounds reasonable within a conspiratorial context, right? But it doesn't mean it's what's true. It doesn't mean that it's accurate. And this contributes to the very thing that intelligence agencies and players like to feed. Um, you know, until you have an answer, maybe it's best to keep the looky-loos in the public, spazzing out over something that it's not, because you know that it's not, and you know that, well, that's not a real danger, that's not a threat, but it buys us time to figure out exactly what's going on.
Well, you know what? We've got about 20 seconds left, and I was going to ask you another follow-up question, but I'll probably just hold off, because when we return from the break here at the bottom of the hour, we have Walter Bosley until the top of the hour here. We will get to some audience questions in our chat rooms, and we really do appreciate Walter coming on in. And, this is why I love him. I mean, when it comes to talking sense about these subjects, Walter is one of the greatest when it comes to it. And I'm so glad he's here with us tonight to break this all down after a busy weekend of the Air Force taking down 4 objects, the Navy 0. And the Air Force is laughing at that. Spaced Out Radio, Chinese balloons, spying, espionage continues right after this on the Mighty SOR. All right, let's say hello to Soul Seeker. How are you? Welcome in. Ian Watts Official. Welcome to SOR Chat. And who else has joined us here late? Magnus for Magnuson. Good to see you. And Damon Walker. Welcome to SOR Chat. Who else am I missing here? Let's Mr. Cowley. Welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his Spaced Out Radio. That's my poetic version. Sweet Donnie C, how you doing? Oh, yes. Random guy's on fire tonight. The biggest threat, in his opinion, is not balloons. It's hypersonic missiles launched from cargo ships. Yes. That would suck.
Yeah.
Sagittarius Dad, nice to see you. Love V Love, I said hello to you when you first came in. So don't get mad at me that you missed out on your hello, Love V Love. Hello. All right. Remember, guys, if you could do me a favor, put your questions in capital letters. My eyes are getting weaker here, and so when you put your questions in capital letters, it makes it a hell of a lot easier for me to read them. Preston Beckett, good to see you. The Scout. What are you talking about? Hey, well, let's figure out what Dirty Filth here drew for us today. Let's take a little peek here, Drew. What do you got here?
I like that.
It's probably what they're saying right about now.
Oh, yeah. You're pretty
Look,
much.
Martha, that's the plant that shoots everything out of the sky. It's like, okay, roll up the windows and lock the door. We're out of here.
Mm-hmm.
The Milky Way is off limits. They got like the police tape around the Milky Way now.
No kidding.
Good job, humans. You ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, just can't allow the aliens to come here for a friendly vacation.
They wanted to go visit the Sasquatch, and now they can't.
No, it's all out. It's all out. And by the way, that is an incredible drawing of North America and South America there, bud. Way to nail that. That looks awesome. Although
does Cuba look like the size it should be, or is that just a Mandela effect thing?
It's a Mandela effect, and you got it way more south. But you also forgot Labrador off of Newfoundland.
I guess I'm going to get beat up by a bunch of Newfies.
Yeah. The Newfies are going to be
knowing you,
pissed.
Dave.
Hi, AA. Welcome. All right. Let's see here. Dave has perpetually tired eyes. Give the man a break and put your questions in caps. Thanks, Jules. Appreciate that. That's actually true. That's actually true. Hey, by the way, that was a nice shot of Blob there, Filth.
Yeah, she was getting rowdy, and then the gargoyle was up here too, and smacking at her tail. And good thing the microphone wasn't on because I was swearing.
Oh yeah, I can explain.
All right, I'm gonna go jump in the chat room.
All right. Good night, Dirty Filth.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.
There goes Dirty. The man, the myth, and the legend all rolled into one. Let's see if he actually logs himself out this time. Because I can't take him out. Will he log himself out? He's still there. He sometimes forgets. We got about 1 minute here, Walt.
All righty.
This is fun times, though.
Oh,
Completely different. I'm actually enjoying what's going on. I maybe that's a sick and twisted me going on, but I'm
No,
actually
look at it as your a mind and soul prepared for what might happen. So, you can deal with it, take it head on. And so that's, I think, where that comes from, you know. So, that's a positive way to look at it. And that's the way I look at it.
Well, very much so. Very much so. Give me 2 seconds here. Big thank you to Susie B, Philip, Melinda, Deb, Phil, and Louis ×3 for the super chats. It's a wonderful way to say hello. Kira, I did say hello to you as well. You got to scroll back and find it. Yes, I said hello, beautiful Kira. Anyways, let's kick this thing off. And that way Walter can go to bed at the top of the hour. Here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, former intelligence officer Walter Bosley is with us, and we are going over what is going on between these balloons, these drones, whatever the heck they are. And we're going to turn this over to some audience questions now for you. And let's start off with Joe in California, Walter, who is asking, what about the balloons we didn't shoot down? How many up there right now?
That's right. Who knows? Who knows, Joe? That's a very good question. And you can bet that they're up there. And not just from China, from, the Russians probably have them. Even our allies will do that. And let's not fool ourselves, at least, the United States, we're doing the same thing. So yeah, there's a lot more up there, I would say.
More. How much, adding to that question though, what's the chances of a lot more of these being picked up by civilians who are now looking in the sky trying to find these objects?
Any civilians with the capability to observe, at the altitude, the high altitude that they're at, now they're going to be looking. And think about it. We can look at the surface of the moon, right? With incredible clarity compared to how it used to be. So, 40,000 feet in the air is going to be nothing. So yeah, people are going to be looking. And what that means is the people putting things up there are going to have to adjust. If they don't want to be seen by, just civilians, they're going to have to come up with, some type of advanced platform technology that will be less detectable.
Right. Okay. Let's go over to Jules here. Where do they go, or what happens to these craft after they complete their mission?
Well, a couple of things. They used to be they would retrieve the balloons, these platforms, and then also at the same time, some would simply drop packets, so to speak, and they would go retrieve them where they landed. Others could be retrieved in the air by aircraft with the kind of the hook capture kind of thing. For example, if you've ever seen that old John Wayne movie, The Green Beret, you see them pick up a captured North Vietnamese officer with I can't remember what the aircraft was. It might have been what we call the C-47 or whatever, but it's got the It's got the arms extending that go out like a V, and the person was connected to a balloon actually, and there's the cable there, and the plane comes in and scoops up the cable and yanked him up in the air, and they pull him inside. That's a very crude description of what I'm talking about. It's kind of a high altitude version of that. So there are multiple ways to collect the data. Now, of course, in our times, it could simply be, via a computer in a download where they just log in, at a computer, and the sensors are sending this data digitally. That would be the easiest way, and they make it from materials that are easily destructible. Or they can design them to where, okay, if it goes down and you capture the means by which this data is being distributed, the data itself is not stored on that system, so you're not getting what the platform collected. So it's these days, it's any number of those possibilities. I would say it's increasingly the digital retrieval method, but they generally let them just fall and land, and let the elements eat away at them.
All right, let's continue on here. Let's go to Swishy Ishy, who's asking, how much money do you think was wasted in shooting down that balloon with a missile?
Well, it was a target of concern, and missiles are designed to shoot down targets of concern. So, look, even if it was just a basic military intelligence collection platform, uh, that was not money wasted. That was resources expended in the manner in which they were designed according to their mission. So that's not a waste of money. There are other things you can point to that are a waste of money, but that's, in my opinion, that's not a waste of money.
Human Carl wants to correct you on something. He says they were C-130s stationed at Nha Trang.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay, so it wasn't 130s. All right, cool. Thanks for that info. I was doing a brain dump on the actual aircraft that you see doing that, but cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on here. Let's go to Scowling Greg O'Brien. He is happy when he's scowling. He asks, why use drones or balloons to spy when satellites are available?
Yes, very good. That's a very astute question. Well, the balloons could be the means to cover what a satellite is collecting. Oh, the balloons collected this, when actually they have an even deeper classified satellite, So it can be for coverage, but also go back to that testing our readiness. That could be the reason the drones and balloons were primarily used. Not so much to collect, just to test our readiness. So there's a couple of answers right there. Also, if the balloon is intended to drop a particular thing, like a bio weapon, into the air, or do something EMP related, it might be that the aerial platform that's not in orbit is the way to go because of, for instance, those jet streams you talk about. So there's a number of legitimate reasons to use these drones and balloons, other than spying. In fact, the spying part could be just a side mission of what the actual intention was. But there's a number of legitimate reasons why we would use these things, even though satellites exist. Why continue to use airplanes? Well, the balloons serve a different function than the satellites, just like airplanes serve a different function than satellites. So satellites are not an end-all be-all resource. They serve their function.
All right, let's continue on. Let's go to Mothwing. Walter, what is your opinion on why they are just now publicly reporting this if it's been happening regularly for years?
Happening regularly? Well, because these things got far down enough or close enough or whatever you want to call it to be seen. Okay, so I as I explained several minutes ago, it's a game we're playing too. And it could be that nothing aggressive was done until now. So, um, and also we don't always want the adversary to know what we know they're doing. So those are three good reasons right there. Um, what this the angle of like this question, I'm not saying Mothwing's doing it, but that's the kind of question that the people that want to say, aha, so therefore, it was otherworldly, because if it had been happening before, we would have heard about it. No, no. In that particular instance, again, I'm not saying Mothwing is saying this, but it's just all part of the intel collections game that is played and how it's played.
All right, let's continue on. Let's go to Human Carl, a great veteran. Thank you for your service, Human Carl. How much would a tactical sized nuclear device capable producing EMP weight?
How much would it weigh? Well, think about it. There are, it's commonly talked about tactical nukes that are in, a briefcase, right? So a briefcase implies something that your average healthy human being could carry. So, we're talking, it could be as light as, 30 or 40 pounds. I'm not a nuclear weapons expert, so God knows how small relatively small they can make these things now. You have to understand, it doesn't necessarily have to be feather weight, okay, to be deployed on one of these balloons, or whatever the aerial platform is. It's the platform just simply needs to be able to carry that weight up to whatever altitude is prescribed. So I would say not very heavy. You're not going to have your typical classic bomb like you see dropping from airplanes in World War II and after, but it doesn't, it can be sufficiently heavy enough to have whatever it needs on there, if that answers your question. But also remember, an EMP blast, the technology for that can be very light, right? Because that's just something that either bursts a certain way in the air, or if it's a scalar weapon. Okay, if it's a scalar weapon, then it's just something that gets beamed down for the desired effect. So that can be as light as a plastic drone, right? Your common plastic drone that you buy in the hobby store.
Could be. And it takes very little chemical type weapons in order to really put a big effect on a large population.
Right. Yeah. It that right there is of great deadly concern. I would not think that we have a worry about nuclear bombs dropping on us from these things. I'm more concerned about the potential for bioweapons and some type of scalar weapon, limited scalar weapon.
And what do you mean by a scalar weapon?
A pulse, a beam type weapon. Okay, Tesla type stuff.
Okay, makes sense. Makes good sense. Let's go to another question here from our audience. Let's go to Penny. Every country lies and are sneaky. Who can we trust?
Sometimes you don't know who you can trust until you know. It might come down to, we won't know exactly who we can trust until there's a big throwdown and they show us that they can trust us. And, there are others out there who feel the same way about us with some of the things that, when I say us, I mean the U.S. Some of the things that we have done since World War II has, kind of hurt those relationships of trust, right? And the things we have provoked in the name of political aims and other such things. There's countries out there that they're wondering, if we can be trusted. So unfortunately, that's the era we live in, and that's a whole other conversation as to why, since World War II, the United States in particular has been acting the way it has. Operation Paperclip, but I said that's another discussion entirely we'll have to have.
Of course. Let's go to Cable Guy here. Cable Guy is asking, why destroy evidence and claim to be retrieving it?
You what you do is you calculate your losses. I mean, you gotta, if you decide that the thing has to be shot down, okay, there you just accept the amount of destruction that you're going to cause, because even broken equipment provides you with valuable information. So it gets destroyed in the process of the response of bringing it down. But you don't want to just leave it there. You want to go pick it up to see what you shot down. It's that simple.
Now, would they do the exact same thing as, say, on a plane crash? You have the investigators who grab all the pieces of the wreckage and basically rebuild the plane to try and figure out. Would they be doing the exact same thing?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. But let me throw another reason in there. That's a very good reason. If you've just shot something down that might have, you had good reason to suspect it had a bioweapon on it, of course you're not going to leave it out there. You're going to go pick it up and get it in a secure place so that it's not dangerous, to someone who might walk up on it. These are the things that have to be considered, or God knows what else they suspect might be on it. So there's very legitimate reasons for retrieving what you just blasted out of the sky, if you can, and not nefarious reasons. Again, I'm not saying Cable Guy is saying this, but this is the kind of question that the everything's ET from another world people will say, oh, well, why would we go retrieve it if we shot it down? It must be because it's from another world and they're hiding it from us, and that's a big resounding okay, but no, not in the case of these things. But the materials hazard, the potential materials hazard and biohazard of it.
And that leads to Sovereign's question here. Why aren't the aerial vehicles spraying chaff, aka toxic chemtrails, shot down as well?
Again, because we're observing how they're doing this. We're observing how they function, how they operate, where they function. We're observing as much as we can. Now I'm assuming you're talking about potentially.
I think he's talking about chemtrails.
Okay. You mean air? Okay, so aerial craft, the chemtrail craft. Why aren't the chemtrail craft spraying chaff, aka toxic chemtrails, shot down as well? Well, think about that. Don't we know that some of those are our own planes? We're not going to. I politely. The question just,
it's okay.
I get what the question's asking, and there's no aha in there. It's my answer to that is because those chemtrail planes are obviously our own, and for whatever reason they're doing that, nefarious or otherwise, of course we're not going to shoot down our own aircraft doing that. But I think by now everybody knows that the chemtrail aircraft are our own. That's old news. So, and it's that's what makes the difference, to answer the question.
All right, let's go to Thomas here. Do you think Russia or China could just flood balloons
at us? Sure. Yeah, it's that could be a useful tactic to one day just keep sending them at us to distract us and somehow try to affect or affect the effect of our response. Sure, for to dilute and just again to see how we respond when inundated. I would say I would be even more concerned about some type of bioweapon if there was a flood of balloons.
Why would you be concerned about that?
Because if they want to drop some type of bioweapon in our skies, you would just want to just saturate our skies with, because you figure some are going to be countered, some are going to be shot down, but we can't get them all. So some are going to get through and drop whatever nasty bio thing on our cities in the jet stream and in our skies. So that's what, a flood of balloons could be used for.
Yeah, that is the danger. And but do you think that looking at what you saw or what they have shown us over the last few days, what we're going to see coming out over the next few, I mean, do you think that China or whoever has made the North American air security or NORAD look foolish with the drones getting in? Or is this all, once again, part of the propaganda?
It's both, and it's part of the propaganda, but at the same time, to an extent, it does make these folks look a little foolish to the public. Where we're at with this, when you get into we have these stages, these steps of trying to detect with terrorism, for example, in counterterrorism. When you see certain activity of terrorist suspects or known terrorist operatives, okay, when they're doing a certain type of on-the-street activity, what you have is either operational, for lack of a better term, for easy understanding, operational practice. They're either practicing what they're going to do when they commit a terrorist attack, or they're about to commit a terrorist attack. And there is that scary little margin when you're a counterterrorism agent, operative, like I was, where you're observing your terrorist targets, subjects, either doing some type of surveillance or present in a location, and there's, more than one of them, or they're exhibiting behavior that, is right before what happens when a terrorist attack occurs. Well, there's this weird little margin, and it's a scary margin when you know about it, that, okay, am I looking at practice, a dry run, so to speak, on a future terrorist attack being planned, or am I looking at the terrorist attack in motion? Okay. This is potentially what we're dealing with these Chinese balloons. Are we looking at them gathering info while they're practicing what they'll do? Is this a dry run for what they'll do when an attack is brewing? Or are we seeing the early stages of an impending attack? This is what they're dealing with in this whole response and the analysis of what's going on here with these balloons. This is why people like me, if we express concerns, like, because we're all too familiar with what I just described. So
1 minute or less, how would the public know if we were into an impending attack?
What you would imagine, it would be probably relatively fast once it actually starts. There would be, just like you see in the movies, folks, the TV, there would be some, stuff dropping out of the sky. There would be enemy naval activity right off your coast. The first thing that would be taken out by the enemy, attacked, would be military bases and, the cities around them. The major cities would be hit. It would be chaos. It would be a nightmare of chaos.
That's why I'm glad I live in the boonies, man. Walter Bosley, we might bring you back here very, very soon to give us an
Sure.
update on this topic, if you don't mind. We appreciate you filling us on in. Coming up next in hour number 3, we're going to head to the swamp. Then little Timmy Senor is going to join us for the UFO report, probably a little overtime as well after the radio show on our YouTube channel with Random Guy. Stick around. There is plenty of Spaced Out Radio coming up. And, of course, more with the UFO report, Tim Senor, just a few minutes' time. We'll be right back on the mighty SOR. All right, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey,
Yeah,
thanks for having me on. I enjoyed talking with you.
I might, if you're available next Monday, I'm thinking about doing a panel on this
Okay.
subject.
Okay.
More UFO side, but if you want to, if you're free and you want to join us, that would be cool.
Yeah, I can confirm with you by the weekend. So
Sure.
Saturday or Sunday, I can.
Sure.
The answer is a tentative yes, but I will confirm with you.
I'll tag you in a Facebook chat group.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. You take care.
Okay. Have a good night. You too.
Bye-bye. Love Walter Bosley. He's amazing. I will be right back, guys. All right. How we all doing? We got about 90 seconds left. Let's clean that out. Make sure you all stick around for the after hours that we're doing. Random Guy will be joining us to give us more updates regarding the Chinese balloons and what he's learned on that. Want to say a big thank you to Kira, Susie B, Philip, Melinda, Deb, Phil, and Louis ×3 for the super chats tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And if you could, because it helps the algorithms, give us a thumbs up or down. And, of course, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. If you don't mind, we'd greatly appreciate it. And, yeah, I will be at UFOCon 2023 coming up March 17th through 19th in San Francisco, California. You can get your tickets at UFOCon2023.com. Make sure you check it on out. I'd love to meet all of you there. And, of course, Vegas. Oh, thank you, Human Carl, for adding to the super chat tonight. Very much appreciate your love and support. And thank you for your service, Human Carl. We really do appreciate it. And also, we will be holding our second annual fan party in Las Vegas, May 19th through 21st at the Golden Nugget in Las Vegas. We want to see you all there. And we want to make sure that you have a good time with us. We got a great list of people coming. We're going to have sky watches happening, experiencers, meet and greets, poker games, everything. Here we go, guys.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Zoyalism. Zoyalism is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is time once again where we head to the swamp. Our resident swamp dweller takes us on another spooky journey.
Hi, Spaced Out Radio listeners. This is Swamp Dweller. It's time for your nightly dose of spookiness on the show. If you have an interesting encounter or a spooky story that you would like to share, be sure to submit them in at swampdweller.net. You can also find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/swampdwellerreads. Now, let's chill out, relax, and together, let's enter the swamp. I work as a child care professional, and one of the kids recently got into hiking. So I took him to an excellent Salt Fork State Park trail that I like. We were all set to hike to Hosak's Cave after parking near the trailhead's beginning. The entire course is about a half-mile long, so I chose this trail for our daily hike. I also decided this trail because any time I had been on it before, it was hectic and full of people and a trendy spot which made me feel a bit more secure. However, this past summer we had a cluster of severe summer storms that caused massive damage to the trail, so to my surprise it was much more complex and empty. However, I wasn't bothered by the open path because a small construction crew was working on a bridge that was just barely visible from the trailhead. It was still up for the hike, despite the entire width of the trail being washed out until it was no more than a foot wide, with a 6-foot to 12-foot drop into a creek bed with a solid rock and several trees that had fallen down. He is very athletic, and I was confident in his abilities. If he was confident that he could do so, I thought that he could. And he seemed to be very excited to tackle our adventure, so who was I to say no? We made it to a platform that allows you to see the entire cave. There were many downed trees surrounding the platform, and it was closed at this point, but we had made it this far, so we decided to maneuver around the venue and proceeded the few hundred feet into the cave. We spent most of the time in this area due to the difficulty it was to get there, so I know exactly what it looked like. There were tree roots directly under the platform, and you could climb down either side. It is also worth noting that Hosak's cave is much more like a cliff with an overhanging rock formation and a trickle of a waterfall directly in the middle. It's not a creepy closed-up cave. It's very open and beautiful. We got to the cave and I noticed a candle that was not burning recently but had been sitting on a large rock with a heart carved into it. I chalked it up to someone having a date and disregarded it. He wanted to climb to the top, where I noticed 2 more candles and 3 stacks of small rocks that somebody had stacked up. I felt weird at this point, but it was about this time that he found a small puddle full of baby salamanders and wanted to catch them. This was the happiest I had seen the kid in a long time, and I didn't have the heart to tell him it was time to go. We spent about an hour catching baby salamanders, and I watched him have the time of his life. We finally decided to leave, and when we got to the platform, dead center in the middle of the tree roots was a wet washcloth hanging that was not there before. He noticed it as well, but did not pick up on the severity of the situation that we were apparently in. At that moment, I factually knew 2 things. 1, someone was watching us, and we did not see them. And 2, they were now potentially hiding in the woods and made it a point not to be seen, but leave an object to be noticed. There was no running back with the narrow trail, and I was not about to tell him that we were in potential danger. I told him to go in front of me, and I kept encouraging him that he was doing great over and over, which seemed to speed him up naturally. I never saw anyone while we were on the trail, but I had the most intense feeling of being watched the entire hike back. We got to the car, and I locked the doors immediately. On our way out of the park, a filthy man, probably in his 30s, came out of the woods and made it a point to stare at me with the blankest expression I had ever seen on a human being. The man followed me with his eyes and head as I drove by him and continued to stare at him until I couldn't see him anymore. At that point, I knew the third fact. He made it a point to make himself appear to me, and facts 1 and 2 were confirmed. That stare stuck with me for days, and I considered counseling after this as it bothered me for several weeks, causing me severe anxiety. I tried to tell myself that maybe we just interrupted his bath time and he was camping and didn't want to startle us. After all, the crazy-looking man had ample time to do anything he wanted while we were catching salamanders. I could not rationalize why he stared into my eyes the way he did. If he wanted to be unnoticed, why would he have made himself so, obvious? Deep down, I know it was much likelier that this was a deliberate action intended to scare me. He never had any idea how panicked I was, and to this day, it is the most fun I had ever seen that kid have. He brings it up regularly, and it's a positive experience for him. But on the other hand, it was one of my worst experiences and made me feel sick and disturbed.
And that's why we love the Swamp Dweller around here, coming on in, breaking in with another spooky story, as he does each and every Monday through Friday night to kick off our number 3. And we really do appreciate it. If you want more Swampy, all you got to do is go to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Swamp Dweller Reads. And you can hit subscribe on that channel and let it all out. Listen to it. Have some fun. Have some freak out. Whatever suits your fancy. We love the swamp around here. From the swamp to the stars. Time for little Timmy Senor and the UFO report.
Nobody's gonna know. They're gonna know.
And that's why we love Tim Senor around here, as he brings us the latest in the UFO news that is happening around the world. Man, has it been busy lately, Tim. Wow.
Yeah, it has absolutely.
It's been crazy. This weekend was nuts. You and I have been talking constantly about what's been going on in this country and yours, and it's just been phenomenal. It is absolutely never been seen before in our history as our country's going through a very tumultuous time right now. And then, we've got this amazing news to follow. So let's briefly talk about it, because I know it's been your show all night tonight and you've been covering it. But boy, balloons, again, we can't stop talking about balloons and objects and how the United States is handling it and Canada is handling it. And in fact, now the whole wide world.
Well, first of all, before we even get started, I'm going to know what's that prune juice you've been drinking?
It's actually blueberry. It's one of those mixes I just do. It's a berry one tonight, so purple.
No
I'm
BS
drinking
news is saying
premise.
news will be crazy tomorrow. So I guess
Yeah.
at least today, let's just dip into this quickly here.
Mm-hmm.
At least today, we are seeing reports of people actually smartening up and saying, look, there's no aliens here. We don't have aliens. Okay, this is not little extraterrestrials coming from the sky and freaking out North America with an invasion of some sort. We're starting to get more level-headed about this, Tim, and I think that's a good sign.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Definitely one of the stories that I wanted to cover was how the White House handled this topic, and the fact that it relayed very clearly on no uncertain terms that this was not aliens. I think they even went as far as to repeat it 3 times during their press briefing.
Yeah, and I also want to take the press secretary for the United States. I want to thank her for calling Canada on the press, one of her interviews, because it's not that we're that close together, but apparently Canada is hard to say.
The lady in red dropped the ball on that one. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Canada. We live in Canada.
I think it's a cool name. We should, hopefully it sticks. Maybe it'll stick. I think it's cool.
Oh, no. Let's not say we did. By the way, Dave's pet peeve for all of our American friends, and I love you guys. You will never hear me say Seattle, America, or Los Angeles, America, or New York, America. Please stop saying Toronto, Canada, Vancouver, Canada, Winnipeg, Canada. We're not that far apart. We only have 10 provinces, 10, not 50 states. And if most Canadians can respect the fact that down south, it's Peoria, Illinois, not Peoria, America, okay? Or
remember, there is a Vancouver here, though, so we do have to specify. I mean, I think specificity is so important.
Vancouver, BC is a lot more easy to say than Vancouver, Canada.
I see your point.
Vancouver, Washington. Oh, just honestly, it's a pet peeve of mine. I don't know why it grates my nerves so badly, but it does. All right, let's get right to it, my friend. China claims now they have unidentified objects in their airspace and are preparing to shoot them down. What's going on here? A little tit for tat there, Timmy?
I like that tongue twister. Yeah, the downing of Chinese spy balloon off of South Carolina coast has raised tensions between Beijing and Washington, quite obviously. And so Chinese authorities have reportedly spotted an unidentified flying object over the waters near a major naval base, and were preparing to shoot it down, according to officials. So maritime authorities in China's eastern Shandong province said they had spotted an UFO in the waters near the coastal city of Rizhao, the state-run Global Times reported on Sunday.
And so other outlets reported that the object was spotted near Qingdao, which is home to the naval base and a major naval base for the People's Liberation Army. So a Marine Development Authority official told the paper that another Chinese news outlet that relevant authorities were preparing to shoot the object down. And so the reporting cited comes days just after American fighters shot down the United States shot down an unidentified object over Canada and off the Alaskan coast. A week before, the U.S. military shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon about the size of 3 school buses off the south coast of South Carolina after it had traversed the continental United States. And so the Biden administration said that the airship was used for surveillance. And now China claims it was on a meteorological research mission. And so we are seeing Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer telling the ABC this week on Sunday that the U.S. believes that the unidentified objects shot down were balloons, though smaller than the one down over the Atlantic Ocean on February 4th. So we're seeing a little bit of pushback from China here, claiming that they too now have potentially an object over their South China Sea, and virtually all of which China claims as its own and strongly objects to military activity by other nations in these contested waters. So it sounds like there is potentially something floating above those waters in China, and it draws some concern. And so maybe we're starting to see a little hint of this coming from Beijing during, furious protests coming because of how the United States handled the Chinese balloon here in the U.S.
Well, you know what I find interesting is you mentioned the spokesperson out of Washington claiming that, these latest 3 were balloons, yet Canadian Department of Defense Defense Minister Anita Anand was specific to say there was no balloon shot down in Alaska, in the Yukon. No balloon whatsoever. It was not a balloon. So it's very intriguing to see the game of words that is being played, and we should expect this. I'm sure there is some trawler out in the bay near Taiwan that maybe has American license plates on it, maybe flying the old Stars and Stripes, that has a couple of balloons on there that may have launched them in the middle of the night into the jet stream and see where they go over China. This is all posturing, I believe.
I absolutely agree with you. And at the same rate, we know that the United States does the same kind of watching of other countries using the same exact deployments. So, this is just a little bit of pushback. Why is it suddenly in the media now? Is it a distraction over bigger and other, more important things? We'll just never know until this is all blown over, if you will. And I'm sorry to use that balloon pun there, but it is one of those things that we're going to have to kind of wait and see, that we'll know once it's all over. Are we going to see more of this? Yes, I do absolutely think so. In fact, we're starting to see pop-ups of this kind of all over the world. And so this new attention has drawn concern as to how the United States reacted. Other countries are now considering having to take on the same tactical maneuver to deal with these balloons or UAP or drones or whatever we're seeing. Because consider that even this most recent takedown of the octagonal object seemed to have strings that were attached to it, kind of implying that it may at one point have had a payload, that perhaps it had dropped somewhere along the way, maybe once it was recognized, or perhaps it's something else. But still, definitely of interest, and we're going to see a lot more of them, I think.
I think we're going to see a lot more of them, too. I don't see this being anywhere close to being done for the next little bit. But you know what? It makes it entertaining. It makes it a lot of fun. And, I'm curious to see how many more countries now, whether they're allies or not, are going to be reporting these balloons. We're hearing them down in South America. We're starting to hear about them in Europe. And it's just interesting. Just interesting to see how these balloons are just popping off everywhere now.
It is. And in a brand new article just released this evening from Wall Street Journal. The topic of the moment is obviously these mystery objects, and now they're considering that a brand new task force has actually just been set up to handle this. And so in the wake of dealing with Arrow, now we have even another task force that's going to partner up using the same criteria as our current UAP task force looking into this. And so amid a baffling series of incidents in which the US has shot down 3 unidentified flying objects, the White House said Monday that it would create a team expected to study airborne objects and the potential security and safety risks that they pose. And I think that that's important. And it could be specifically for this sort of thing, but they're working hand in glove with Arrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to get a 7th military branch now, the United States Balloon Force. That's what we are going to see, the United States Balloon Force. And look, we are not going to get videos of this, okay? Alaska and the Yukon are just way too remote for any videos or anybody from the public to get them. The cool part about the Lake Huron shoot down or the one in South Carolina, the citizens were watching for this. They were waiting for this. They were prepared. It was an air show.
That's right.
And, people will say, well, how come the people in the Yukon didn't get it? Well, we explained earlier. There's 43,000 people in a territory the size of Texas. And all of them, 25,000 of them live in the main hub of Whitehorse. Chances of that getting on video, slim to none. Alaska, exact same way. Once you leave the coastline and get into the mountains, the population is more, you got a better chance of seeing a grizzly bear hunt down a caribou than you do of actually seeing a human being out there.
And my understanding was they scrambled F-16s to take down the object over Lake Huron. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And my also understanding is that they missed with the first shot because they came back with 2 fired missiles. And did you hear that the first shot missed and it took 2?
That I did not.
Yeah. Kind of interesting. I did hear, that they did release through the war zone the tapes from the recordings from the pilots that took down this object. And in their very words, it was a very small object about the size of a 4-wheeler, I think was one of the quotes, and that it was going to be harder than expected to take it down simply because of the size. So perhaps it's not a surprise that it took 2 to take it down. I'm not savvy enough to know the details on how hard that could be, but it is interesting to consider the size and that was part of the narration that was given to the public through the war zone.
Yeah, well, you know what? As we got about 90 seconds to go here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour, I think it's going to be interesting to see if these are now done for a while, that they may all of a sudden go dark again where we're not going to know what's going to happen. Because like Random Guy and Walter Bosley have said, this stuff's been happening for decades. Okay, these balloons have been coming over here for decades. We just started spotting them. And it's taken a while, but that's where we are. So the question is, do they now that there's a big media hype over this, at some point they will have to, probably in the weeks ahead, have to say, okay, they're all gone now, people. Don't bother looking at the sky. We took care of them. Big Brother got them all. Let's hug in victory once again. Even though they know there's probably more out there.
Why
and
now?
They'll go back to UFOs.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tim?
I'm why now guy. Why now? It just seems like maybe another distraction. Everyone I know says distraction, distraction, distraction. It makes sense. Why now? Are they suddenly drawing attention to these mysterious balloons that have been there for years?
Exactly. And that is something that we need to know. Is it part of a UFO front? Is it the start of Blue Beam? I doubt it. But you never know. You never know. Or is it just to break tension, considering there's a lot of tension between the West and the East, and we need to see that start to go away. When we return on Spaced Out Radio, a UFO medical coalition is seeking medical professionals to help with experiencers. We'll talk about this and more on Spaced Out Radio with Tim Senor next. Sweet Tony D, Random Guy, will be joining us after the radio side, which reminds me I need to send Random Guy the invite. Random Guy, Random Guy. See, there was another mass shooting tonight at Michigan State. My God.
Yeah.
Ryan G, Guy Calgary, or Guy Calgary, how are you? Let's see here.
Shout out to Sky News.
I never saw it. Apparently, Sky News gave us a shout out last night, and they're based out of Europe. I don't know whether it was a verbal on video or if it was on print. Never saw it, but we had a few people hop into last night's chat room on After Hours, say, hey, they were told that they heard us on Sky News and they wanted to Dave, saw you on at my mom's TV house. Have a good night. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Apparently it was some live feed on Sky News. That's all I know. That's all I know.
They love you in Europe.
No. We love the Commonwealth, man.
There you go. Hey, do you know what the Dust channel is? Dust?
Dust? No, I've never heard of it.
It's a sci-fi channel. No. Well, if your audience wants to, it's a free channel for sci-fi, and it's pretty much like UFO shows back to back all day long. But I was watching it, and all of a sudden my face popped up, and sure enough, the Canadian show Encounter UFO is playing on there. So anyone that wants to watch that series, they can see my family's account on Encounter UFO. And for that matter, Sev Talk is also on there. She's also on that show with me. So catch it if you can on the channel Dust.
Dust. Timmy's Dust right now. Eric Markham says, I love dust. Eric also likes glitter on his forehead. Wait till you see Markham in Vegas. He'll have like glitter all over his forehead and on his ears and everything. Something about sprinkling glitter. He just loves it.
I'm highly sus as how that happens. There's only two ways that can happen: self-application and non-self-application. I won't get into detail. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you going to be in San Francisco, Dave?
I'm going to be in San Francisco March 9th or 17th through 19th at UFO MegaCon 2023. Go to UFOMegaCon2023.com. Science Bob is going to be there. Melinda Leslie, Sev Talk, I myself, and many more will be there hanging on out. I'm coming down from Canada to talk some UFOs.
Canada. I love that. I love that.
Pisses me
I'm
off.
sorry. I
It
know.
pisses me off.
I will never say it, but it's funny when you do.
Well, of course, I'm doing it for humor, but it really pisses me off. All right. Mm-hmm. It's like me making fun of the American accents, the 72 different dialects you have in your country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand some Southern draws. That's for absolutely sure.
Try understanding a Newfoundlander speak.
Right. Or New Orleans. If you go to New Orleans, forget about it. You're not going to understand anything. Plus, I think they speak French there as well, which doesn't help.
Canada.
French Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
Oh, hold on a second. Wham Bam Ham. That's a very, very interesting question you just asked. I want you to bring that up to me after the show, okay? I'm going to tag it. I've got something for you on that. 10 seconds here. We're at a third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. I want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We bring in once again Tim Senor from our UFO report. Tim is with us a few times a week to break everything down. That's the UFO news. And we're going to get into a company looking for doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, anybody in the medical field to help UFO experiencers. What's this about?
Yeah, great news coming in today. In recent years, reports of unidentified flying objects, commonly referred to as UAPs, sorry, Dave, have captured the attention of the public and experts alike. And as the phenomenon continues to attract widespread attention, a growing number of witnesses have come forward to report experiencing physical and psychological effects after encountering UAPs. These effects range from headaches and nausea to anxiety and sleep disturbance. And so Ted Rowe, the co-founder and executive director of the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomenon, or NARCAP, said his own experiences with the UFO and the aftermath of these encounters led him to create the UAP Medical Coalition, or UAPMC. And in a quote here, he says, "I've got a family history of these exposures to UAP that goes back to when I was 5 years old. And actually, there's one or two before that my family talks about. So I've been dealing with this subject all my life. My therapist was out to lunch in terms of UFOs in general, but she was good with trauma," Rowe said. And so UAPMC was formed to assist medical and mental health professionals seeking to collaborate on the topic of UAP. After Rowe noticed the difficulties people having these experiences were facing when reaching out for medical and psychological help. In a quote, he says, "I started noticing people in the groups, and they were all having trouble too. I tried to join some experiencer groups. Oh no, there's a lot of sickness in there. But that's where people go because they're desperate. You know, it's in their psychology and whether they have the discipline to hold to the reality of what they went through. So I'm worried about them. And I realized that the mental health and medical community was not at all prepared to deal with this. And so we're getting some new information here. And even Gary Nolan, a professor of microbiology and immunology at Stanford University School of Medicine, recently conducted a study exploring the potential health and effects of UAP encounters on the human brain. This study is notable because it represents one of the first attempts to systematically examine the possible biological effects of UAP interactions on humans. And so this is going to be one of the key findings of the study that Nolan has done, was that individuals who reported UAP encounters showed evidence of increased activity in certain regions of the brain, specifically in areas involved in the regulation of stress and the processing of traumatic memories. So the researchers also found changes in the levels of certain neurotransmitters and other biochemicals, which could indicate changes in brain function. So UAP Med is made up of a team of volunteers from different fields of expertise, and the group includes therapists, professors, veterans, experiences, and researchers. So specifically, we have Ron Westrom, a professor at Eastern Michigan University and sociologist, specializing, there was a misspelling there, specializing in sociology of science and technology, said of the group. And he's saying here, it's amazing to meet all the people and to see that this is a wonderful experience and more people need to have it. So this is bringing a lot of relief to a lot of people, and it's bringing some reality of the psychology and the medical aspects of interaction with UAP. And it's coming from an amazing person who's done a lot of good, including the creation of NARCAP in this community, which is a massive database that is provided to everyone based on, I believe, military and aviation professionals. So they are typically expert witnesses, and it's a massive database. So congratulations to Ted Rowe on this new formation. And Dave, I know you're probably excited. Let's talk a little bit more about this new creation.
Well, I think it's a great idea if they're going to go at this as being legit. Okay, that's what I want to see as an experiencer myself. The legitimacy of it is something that I'm very curious of. All right, like what kind of patients are they taking? Because one of the talks that you and I have had over the last few months is, what is an experiencer? Like somebody who sees dots in the sky one time, to me, that's not an experiencer. And I've heard radio show hosts and other people call it, well, I'm an experiencer too, because I saw dots one night. And they disappeared after about 3 seconds. Right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have had real health and mental issues with their contact. And we're not talking crazy people here. We're talking good, downright, hardworking individuals, male, female, doesn't matter, okay, who happen to have an experience of a lifetime that they cannot understand. It keeps them up at night. I remember the first time I started seeing some UFOs up close and personal. Dude, I didn't sleep for days. You know, it literally was like that moment in Close Encounters of the Third Kind where you see Richard Dreyfuss building the Devil's Tower out of everything, whether it's clay or mashed potatoes or crayons or dirt out of his yard. When I started seeing that, when I saw that black triangle over my house, I didn't sleep for days. And the more and more I researched it, the more and more I got frustrated because every black triangle I saw online was nothing like the one I saw. And that was maddening to me. Maddening. Okay. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of people like this in North America, maybe tens of thousands, who just want to know what has happened to them and why maybe it continues to happen if it includes ET contact and or abduction. So my only goal for this, and I really hope, is that this didn't turn into a place where experiencers become guinea pigs, and especially guinea pigs for government agencies who are trying to figure out what is going on. If this is independent, if this is about true health, about caring for people who've had the most extraordinary experience of their life, I'm all for it. Okay, but the minute I see a government agency on there, that's where I would recommend do not go. Do your homework beforehand. Don't just race for a conclusion here. All right, I know there's a lot of experiencers out there, man, who just want to race to a conclusion. I'm one of them. But at certain times, you need to take a step back and just do a little bit of homework. Not much, just a little bit of homework, because you really don't want to become a guinea pig over something like this.
You're absolutely right. I think my personal knowledge of Ted Rowe and how he operates is that this will absolutely become a legitimate program. And knowing that he has that kind of means and has had such success with NARCAP, I expect absolutely to see the same sort of thing for UAP MD, I believe it is. Let me just recap that. And so what I am interested UAP MC. And so what I am interested to maybe dive deeper into is the fact that obviously there are different levels of experience, and even perhaps somebody that has seen dots in the sky was convinced that they were seeing something otherworldly. And so it may have been a paradigm shift for them. It may have shattered their mental boundaries of what they were willing to accept, right? And so this is the sort of foundation that needs to be for anyone, right? For someone that has met ET up close and personal, and for also somebody that is just for the first time seeing something and having their eyes opened, but still may need a group to talk to. You know, I think this is the sort of thing that Ted Rowe is looking for here, some kind of support and group on a very much larger level than just your hometown group session. And so by my understanding of what he's putting together here, it's also a database for people to refer to. And so if you are having an experience of some sort, you can refer to a database to see if other people are having the same sort of experience, which I could definitely see as potentially being valuable for an experiencer to not feel so isolated, you know, whether it's dots in the skies, Dave, or something where it's a repeated close up and personal contact.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. But like I said, when it comes down to the study, let us just hope right off the bat that it isn't about just being a guinea pig. I hate to sound like a broken record again.
Yeah.
Because you're always making me sound like a broken record. But, I mean, you don't need to do that study. There are plenty of universities out there doing these studies now.
Yeah. Gary Nolan, for example.
Rice University, another one.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So, yeah. All right, let's get to the final topic here. And where are we going here now, Timmy?
Well
let's take a look here. Let's head to the White House, where they want you to believe those UFOs weren't aliens.
Yes, indeed. Unfortunately for the dedicated alien conspiracy theorists among us, the time is apparently not yet nigh. So don't don your tinfoil hats and throw them out the window necessarily, because the Biden administration has declared that the recent instances of unidentified aerial objects being shot down over the US and Canadian territory are not related to extraterrestrial life. In a quote, I know there have been questions and concerns over this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns, said White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre in a Monday afternoon press briefing. Again, there is no indication of aliens, she emphasized for a third time, adding, we wanted to make sure that the American people knew that. And let me just address here that I was watching that live, and all of the press were laughing as she was saying this. It was very audible chuckle in the background So obviously there were going to be no questions pushing this topic after that, and we didn't see any further questions. And so in a further quote, "Would you tell us if there were?" one journalist in the crowd of reporters shouted back in response to Jean-Pierre chuckling and made a brief joke about the movie E.T. As recently as Sunday night, Pentagon officials had indicated that they weren't ruling anything out yet, meaning aliens were still technically on the table. But the White House's announcement seemingly squashes that pipe dream. And so you may say, wait, what's going on? Over the past 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the U.S. military has shot down or aided in Canadian operations to shoot down 3 different, as of yet unidentified, aerial objects. And so according to White House officials, all of those objects were aimlessly drifting without propulsion in the atmosphere between 20 to 40,000 feet, and thus posed a risk to commercial aircraft. So the 3 back-to-back takedowns followed the earlier down edge of the 200-foot tall craft that the U.S. officials are calling a Chinese surveillance spy balloon. However, none of the subsequent aircraft targeted in the recent days have been linked to China or any particular owner, state, corporate, or otherwise. Further, officials haven't determined any purpose, surveillance or otherwise, of any of the 3 most recent objects in the takedown. And so John Kirby, the coordinator for strategic communications on the National Security Council, said in the morning briefing. Dave, your thoughts? It's not aliens.
No, but you know what? One thing that does kind of concern me about this, and I'm curious to get your opinion, and maybe we'll get Random Guy's opinion on this as well. For months, if not years, excuse me, I have been asking, where's the threat narrative? You've heard me many a times. Our audience has heard me. We also pointed it out. We did a show with Grant Cameron when the Canadian Department of National Defense came out and said there was 0 threat narrative to UFOs over Canadian airspace. But the problem we have now is people are calling these Chinese drones UFOs, which they are not. They're unidentified objects, yes, but they're not what we would consider a classic UFO, or what the government wants to try and put this UAP crap into our mouths with, because they always need a different acronym. So the question is, from a public standpoint, Tim, and I'm curious your opinion, how does this change the threat narrative when there isn't a threat narrative regarding UFOs?
It's a great question, but it's obviously going to reinforce everything that they've been saying, how potentially UFOs do pose a threat. I think it's actually reinforcing that, because we just saw them take them down. And if they're between 20 and 40,000 feet and we don't know what they are, well, they just need to come down because they pose a threat to our aviation. And I think it's great that, RG actually dug up an article that's almost 3 years old. And the topic is that the Pentagon is testing mass surveillance balloons across the U.S. Now, this is a 3-year-old article coming from The Guardian. And that's the headline. And it's saying that the exclusive is that the high-altitude balloons promise a cheap monitoring platform that could follow multiple cars and boats for extended periods, right? And we can dive a little more into this article, perhaps when RG hops on. But I can tell you what I do definitely see is them reinforcing the threat of things that we're not sure of in the skies. We are starting to take the opinion, or at least the standpoint, obviously, that we're going to shoot it down first and figure out what it is after, because it was still called an object even after it was taken down. So that is concerning. I think that we should know what we're firing on. And I mean, I hate to say it that way, but at the same rate, it's good that we take down things that are in the way of our aircraft. However, I've yet to hear of one of these objects interfering with our aircraft, Dave. I haven't heard that yet. So I'm still not sold on these in particular being a threat. I'm aware of it, and it would be horrible to see that happen. A plane running into a bus-sized piece of equipment, that's a horrifying thought. However, we see the United States using this technology on its own. 25 unmanned solar-powered balloons were launched from rural South Dakota, drifting 250 miles and spanning portions of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Missouri, before concluding in central Illinois. And they say concluding. I mean, there's no real details here, but it was, traveling in the stratosphere at altitudes of up to 65,000 feet. Right now, that's over our own country, and it was our own test designed by the Pentagon. But it sounds as if 3 years ago, the Pentagon was testing out some balloons of its own at 65,000 feet in particular. I find that interesting.
I find it interesting too, but I also look for the idea that, Tim, and don't take offense to what I'm saying, but it really seems that, we're buying into a current narrative here regarding the threat. And I don't see that narrative. I just don't. I really don't. But hey, that's just me. We got 1 minute to go here on Spaced Out Radio before we have to say goodnight to everybody. And Tim, I'll give you the final word on this, threat or not. I mean, let's just say it. Thumbs up. We'll go rock, paper, scissors on it.
Okay.
Okay. I win it. I win its threat, or its non-threat. You win its threat. Okay.
Here we go.
All right.
Rock,
paper,
scissors. Oh, sorry.
What the hell?
I thought you said thumbs up, thumbs down. We're going to have to do this again.
No, we've run out of time. We've run out of time. We're going to ask you, Tim, before you appear on us or on SOR again, that you learn the rules to rock, paper, scissors. There's no dynamite in there, man. And either way, the dynamite, I would have cut the wick off, which means I would have won. Yeah, I'll take that. Buddy, another great report. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a couple nights' time. And, of course, to everybody like Swamp Dweller, who was coming on in, giving us another spooky story. Walter Bosley, the first 2 hours, really having a lot of fun with Walter. And don't forget, everyone, we'll be back tomorrow night as well with another high-quality show of woo. And we want to see you here as well. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat room tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAV, Facebook, LinkedIn, Spreaker, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home.
I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. That was fun. Good times there.
Good times.
Good times. There's Random Guy.
Hey.
Look at that. Orendo. El Rondo.
Dude, I had a crazy day.
Crazy how?
Well, for one, I had like a 3-hour phone call with Marquise from last night.
Great guy.
No,
He
we went deep. We went deep down the hole today. So good dude. I looked down. We were talking for like 3 hours. I'm like, dang, bro, are we dating now?
Well, he is. Marquise is handsome. I'm not gonna lie there.
I was like,
He is a
dang.
handsome guy.
Yeah, good conversation. How's it going over there, Timmy?
It's going good, bud. How about yourself? You were hanging out with Marquise. He is a really sharp dude. He knows stuff, that guy, and he's actually had some crazy experiences.
Yeah, he was sharing some of that with me. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
He's got
Yeah.
aliens, man.
Good dude.
Aliens.
Good stuff. So what are we talking about after hours today?
Well, Tim was gonna talk about the Metamucil he's drinking to help prevent gout and other thickening to the arteries.
I'm an old man.
Old man issues.
It's blueberry. I mean, actually, it tastes good.
Oh, it's good. Antioxidants. I love blueberry.
Yeah.
And I don't even eat healthy stuff, so that tells you something.
Yeah, I don't drink stuff I don't think is good tasting. Anyways, yes, it is Soylent Green for whoever threw that in the chat. I do have chat up, so if people want to throw questions up, I can assist Dave in throwing those in front of RG.
What I was trying to ask earlier with your guest, you missed my question, Dave. Do I need to spam you?
No,
I'm joking.
Speaking of
capital
questions,
letters, nuts.
No,
Didn't
I was
you
just
have
trying to.
questions,
I
Dave?
wanted to ask him a signals intelligence question, but then I realized he's Air Force OSI, so he may not even actually know the answer. But well, he was there. But then after the moment, it would have been rude, and I learned my lesson about being rude here. People will follow me to my house.
That's right. We're watching Big Brother now. We
People
flipped
are
it.
crazy, man.
Yeah, we
Crazy
flipped-
out there.
We're watching Big Brother.
So, what did you think about that story I sent you?
Yeah, I can't believe it's 3 years old. I didn't catch that at first.
You like the tinfoil perspective, though, right?
Well, let's
Yes.
explain the story to the audience first.
Okay, yes.
Go for it,
Yeah,
Timmy. You got
Well,
in front, right?
I don't. Actually, I was going to see if Dave wanted to get to that audience question that he had tagged. Is that like something we should do first, Dave?
Where is it?
You had said that you tagged a question from your audience. And you're
Oh,
like,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. Wham Bam Ham. It's amazing how Ross Dog's broken spirit always shows up when you're on here, Random Guy. It's amazing.
He's a fan.
So the question is, Ross Dogs, would you like to tell us your agency? I'm going to guess that let me see. We know NSA guy comes in every now and again.
Yeah, he's not here tonight.
No, well, he was earlier actually.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was earlier. Let's see here. Could we have two NSA guys? No, that just seems a little.
It's just funny because we're really not talking about anything secret, and that's why people. So just so you guys know, I think I told Dave. I don't know if I told you, Timmy. I had like 20 people hit me up in my Twitter DM, and half were cool, and I recognize them from chat, and we're chatting it up. The other half are just straight psychopaths. like, dude, I'll find you, and I know you, and I'm like, wow, this is intense. He's like, like. The only reason I'm not on camera is not because some big secret. Any of you could find me very easily. That's not the purpose of this. Purpose of this is I don't want to be a star of this stuff. I don't want to be. This is not my thing. I'm just here to give some insight to things. That's literally it. Dave asked me to do it. If not, I would have started my own channel and did my own thing. I don't want to do that. And frankly, I don't know enough to do this. All I do is give insights, and people get mad and they get crazy. Everybody needs to chill. What do you guys say? Like, feel the woo? Like, do something.
Oh, yeah. You got to massage. You just can't. You got to be careful because somebody big as you, when you jump into the woo pool, if you go into the shallow end, you're going to break your legs. You're going to have to. You're either going to have to jump into the deep end, or just take your time and get some arm floaters and kind of wade your way in.
Ease your way.
It's funny, man.
I want to get to Wham Bam. I want to get to Wham Bam Ham. Here's the interesting part about the UFOs that look like manta rays. Now, Alan Greenfield, in his book, The Secret Cipher of the UFO Knots, actually talks about disc-shaped UFOs that have paintings of blue manta rays on them. And the screwed up part about that is he announced that during one of his appearances on Hellier Part 2. I believe it was the 6th or 7th episode of Hellier Part 2. Now, the screwed up part about that for me personally is this. About 10 days before Hellier 2 came out, I had a dream that I was taken, or that I was on this farm, and that my good friend growing up from high school was there. My father was there. Samantha Mowat was there. And a kid I coached in hockey was there as well. And there were a bunch of other people there that I didn't see. And all of a sudden, right across the street from this farmyard, there was this UFO that came flying by. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer to us, to when it turned its bottom side to us to show us what was on the bottom, which was a blue manta ray. And then 9-10 days later, I'm watching Hellier, and he starts talking about manta rays within the old UFOs being seen, painted on or shaped like manta rays. It was interesting. So that's my story. I just found that really unique.
Very interesting. So we were going to dive into that article that RG sent me earlier. Are you guys cool with that?
Yeah, go for it.
So we're talking about a 3-year-old article that RG dug out and sent to me to review, and it absolutely kind of raises all kinds of flags and rings bells with me. So let's talk a little bit about it. So The Guardian wrote this article 3 years ago, and the headline is Pentagon testing mass surveillance balloons across the U.S. The high-altitude balloons promise a cheap monitoring platform that could follow multiple cars or boats for extended periods. The U.S. military is conducting wide-area surveillance tests across 6 Midwest states using experimental high-altitude balloons. And so documents filed with the Federal Commission's, or I'm sorry, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, reveal this information. And so up to 25 unmanned solar-powered balloons are being launched from rural South Dakota and drifting 250 miles to an area spanning portions of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri before concluding in central Illinois. And so traveling in the stratosphere at altitudes of up to 65,000 feet, the balloons are intended to provide a persistent surveillance system to locate and deter narcotic trafficking and homeland security threats. According to a filing made on behalf of Sierra Nevada Corporation, an aerospace and defense company. So the balloons are carrying high-tech radars designed to simultaneously track many individual vehicles, day or night, through any kind of weather. The tests, which have not previously been reported on, received the FCC license to operate from mid-July until September, following similar flights licensed last year. And so Arthur Holland Michael, the co-director for the Center for the Study of the Drone at Bard College in New York, said, what this new technology proposes is to watch everything at once. Sometimes it's referred to as combat TiVo, because when an event happens somewhere in the surveillance area, you can potentially rewind the tape to see exactly what occurred and rewind even further to see who was involved and where they came from. So the tests have been commissioned by the U.S. Southern Command, or Southcom, which is responsible for disaster response, intelligence operations, and security cooperation in the Caribbean and Central and South America. And so Southcom is jointly an effort by U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, and other forces. And one of its key roles is identifying and intercepting drug shipments headed for the U.S. So in this quote here, we do not think that American cities should be subject to wide area surveillance in which every vehicle could be tracked wherever they go, said Jay Stanley, a senior policy analyst at American Civil Liberties Union. However, even in tests, they're still collecting a lot of data on Americans who's driving to the Union House, the church, the mosque, Alzheimer's clinic, and so on. We should not go down the road of allowing this to be used in the United States, and it's disturbing to hear that these tests are being carried out by the military or no less. So for many years, Sierra Nevada has supplied Southcom with light aircraft packed with millions of dollars worth of sensors, which then flew over Mexico, Colombia, Panama, and the Caribbean. But planes require expensive crews and can only fly for a few hours at a time. So in a report to the Senate Armed Forces Committee this past February, and this would be 3 years ago, Southcom's commander, Admiral Craig Fowler, wrote, while improving efficiency, we still only successfully interdicted about 6% of known drug movements. So the new balloons promise a cheap surveillance platform that could follow multiple cars and boats for extended periods. And because of winds, often travel in different directions and different altitudes. But the balloons can usually hover over a given area simply by ascending or descending. So a little bit of the details of this has been made public through this old article, and just saying that the Pentagon approved the testing of very similar balloons as to what we've been seeing lately. And so RG brought this to my attention. It definitely raised up some interest in me, knowing that this was done surveillance, deep surveillance over our own country, with perhaps the blanket of, oh, this is a test, or, oh, this is for drug enforcement. But again, it could have absolutely just been a test to see if we could do surveillance like this before we sent things like this overseas. Your thoughts?
Random guy, go ahead.
No, I mean, it doesn't, it's not indicative of anything directly. I just wanted you to be aware that on a specific level, not even on a clandestine level, they're openly doing this stuff all the time. And any number of these things, I joked with you about tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. They've been doing surveillance on our own citizens, and they're about to be exposed. So they staged shooting down our own stuff that was overstepping. Complete conspiracy theory. I was joking. But when you do stuff like that, and then stuff like this happens, you open the door to that kind of speculation. That's the kind of things that you get, and it muddies it up and it murks it up even more.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at like the craft that was shot down over Lake Huron. It keeps getting reported that it had strings. Well, I mean, a string, like what? Like a kite string? Probably not. More likely, my guess, I don't think China in a non-combat state and a non-aggressor state would have the balls to drop an actual payload of anything, because now you're using a kinetic intrusion beyond monitoring. That's a further step in escalation. It's more likely that those quote-unquote strings were some type of antennas or communication apparatus, in my opinion. And my other friends agree with that assessment. Obviously, we don't know, but speculating based on the facts, Because why would you just have strings? Oh, so everybody's like, okay, maybe they dropped the payload. I highly doubt they dropped the payload, because that takes you to a much better level of use of force escalation.
Right. That does make sense, but perhaps it was able to drop a payload when it was noticed so that none of the data collection techniques could be revealed to us.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, there's only so many mechanisms of techniques. You're either going back to the ground, you're going to an aircraft, or you're going to a satellite. Or you have a recorder with a hard drive of some form, and there's a dead drop. I guess that's a potentiality, but based on where that was over the lake and whatnot, it just doesn't jive with all that. And like I said before, dropping anything, even if it was, I don't know, your kid's homework in a backpack, you're dropping something kinetically into our territory that has potential, at least, to cause harm or an event on the ground, even if it's landing on someone's head. And that's an escalation in itself.
Right. We were talking amongst ourselves about the fact that Canada came forward and they were very transparent with details and events. And it was in stark contrast to how the United States handled the same event. And
blame Canada.
Well, I was wanting to ask your opinion, because very clearly they were still calling it an object, and it was cylindrical in shape. And the people that had eyes on it were saying that there was no visible means of propulsion. Now, out of all of the things that were downed recently, I felt personally that this was the most interesting of them all. And do you have any further insight on that, perhaps, that you could share?
So the one that was in northern Alaska, 99%, that was a drone. And I actually don't even think it was a Chinese drone, to be honest with you, because of the location and the range of the type, shape, because they have a finite amount of fuel if it is a drone, if we're operating on an assumption. Even if it's an airship that's assisted, there's going to be a finite range. And if you look at where China's at geographically, if you look where northern Alaska is, they would have had to take a cargo ship up there. It doesn't make a lot of sense tactically, especially in that region, but that's neither here nor there. The stuff that's in the actual one that you're talking about in Canada that got shot down, the discrepancy of reporting, in my opinion, is because Trudeau and that administration's taking orders, more or less, from the United States. They're like, I'm sure that Trudeau and whoever his higher ups are up there, it's like the Royal Space Mounted Police or whatever they have up there. I had slighted my Canada joke, but I'm sure they know exactly what it is, but maybe everybody doesn't know exactly what it is. They don't know exactly how they're supposed to articulate it. And my guess is some of those things come out maybe too honest. And like I mentioned last night, a lot of our reporting is done to feign incompetency. Oh, we lost track of it over the state. Oh, we didn't. No, we didn't. We just don't want them to know exactly what we did and how well we did it. That's just the way that works. But as far as the shoot down itself, I've heard some crazy different things, but nothing from any source that I know that can confirm. I've heard everything from this thing was maneuvering around to there was missed shots to the F-18s tried to lock it on and they couldn't, and then the F-22 had to come up behind it, which if it's an old ass F-18, it kind of makes sense, but you get what I'm saying. But nothing to where any of them are plausible, but I don't know any more than you do, to be completely honest.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, because we had gotten mixed reports, including that some of the instruments had been affected. And when we talked, you were like, nah. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about that now. Why are you so hesitant to believe potentially that their instruments were being affected by the object, at least?
Because it was, from my understanding, only one aircraft that happened, that occurred. And that could be a malfunction. It could be out of range. If we're talking about something on the order of the sizes of these things, and they didn't have basically squelched up, for lack of a better word, on their tracking system, the sensitivity adjusted, then maybe on that one pass they couldn't lock on, or they couldn't get it, or something was off. I don't fly the jets. I know them pretty well, but I don't know the avionics on that level. Right. But the fact that only one had that issue temporarily tells me it's more likely that it was something in order of what I just said, and not necessarily that it was, because if it was being jammed, those aircraft, especially the F-22, would be able to detect the act of jamming and know that that was the source, based on the avionics they have in there.
Right. And what do you consider the possibility is that even the pilots themselves are subject to hysteria? And I don't mean that in like hysterical sense, but just that they're aware of the UAP topic and may think that they are coming in contact with that. And so they consider every aspect under hyper intense. And if they're having a psychological moment, they may report back a psychological moment during that.
I don't think it's so much that. I would say, if anything, it could be physiological. So like when you're in a jet, you're pulling G's, right? Blood's leaving your head. This is a low speed encounter. This is not a high speed dogfight where I would expect, you're blacking out, you're redding out, your G suit's compressing. I highly doubt any of that ever occurred during these engagements. So I'm more likely to trust the guys that are put through the ringer. These guys, they don't put people in these jets that are not unbelievably competent at their job and physically able to handle it, and mentally. So in certain cases in combat, I could see that happening, or in a high altitude or a high G maneuver. It's highly unlikely there was a physiological or hysterical reaction going on by the pilots, and for at least the fighter pilots. Civilian pilots, that's a cluster. You never know what you're really going to get.
So go ahead, Dave.
No, continue your line. But
I was just going to say, so then how do we explain the reports of the psychological effects that reported coming from some of these pilots, along with the physiological, and then also the physical inability to lock on and things like that?
Well, again, I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm not a pilot for these jets, but like the capability would suggest if they were using older aircraft, like I've saw someone mention, like back in the day, an AIM-9 Sidewinder was basically just quote unquote a heat-seeking missile, right? In the old days, and they used the AMRAAM 120s or whatever to reach out and touch somebody. So technology's evolved. It's not out of the question that the size and tracking of this object was just simply too small for the older generation aircraft to handle. I don't know. I'm not privy to that information.
Any thoughts, though, on the psychological aspects that were reported? Do you think, I mean, so those were reported along with the inability to lock on, and those were kind of at the same time, in my understanding in the story. Did you want to, I see you haven't really answered it. I'm not sure if you want to, but do you think that there could be any kind of, let's say this object had something on board, maybe an EMP or something that could even disturb our pilots? Is that possible?
Sure, it's possible. Absolutely. Why not?
Okay.
Is it likely? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just going by step 1 through 20. I have friends that are fighter pilots. And so like we discuss these kind of things occasionally. I haven't really talked to them lately on this stuff, but I'm just going through my mind and I'm just like, nah, like it's possible. Yes, anything's possible. But based on the way it's been discussed and the capability of those, that's why one of my main questions was I wanted the exact range of engagement. How close? Not just that they were there. Were they 1 mile? Were they 1,000 feet? Were they 10 miles? Like what was the because that'll also tell you the likelihood that it was something electronic jamming, the proximity. You see what I'm saying? Or the type of munition they used, or if they missed with the munition, what have you. That kind of getting those closing distances, velocities, those are all part of the picture of understanding how realistic the scenario is, that it's jamming versus just the system couldn't lock on because it was too small or what have you.
And just very briefly, in your experience, the same things that are being used to potentially jam our pilot systems, the microwaves being used, could they also be affecting our pilots' brains?
No. it operates on a different system.
Okay.
Just like if you launch an EMP right now, you could put an EMP in the back of a rental truck, drive it through the city, take all the power out, and the people would be fine.
Okay.
So it's a different kind of device.
Okay. Cool. Dave, over to you.
All right, I got a couple questions. Number one, in regards to the Canadian Minister of Defense, random guy stating that the one that was shot over the Yukon was not a balloon.
Right.
And yet earlier today, I believe a member of the military was a military spokesperson was saying all of them were balloons. Is that just part of the psychological media propaganda warfare that we're hearing?
It could be, but I'm more inclined to believe it's just lazy vernacular. Because everything that I've read and everything I've heard so far indicates that yes, the one that was in Alaska was more likely a drone or a hybrid ship, not like alien hybrid, but like airship with better propulsion or something on it. Whereas the other ones seem to be more just straight up like molded balloons.
Okay. And I'm going to bring something up here. This is from our listener, Joe, who lives about 40 miles north of Beale Air Force Base. He was taking a picture up here of a T-38 Talon training jet.
Yep.
The two-seat version of the old F-5 Freedom Fighter. But it's this thing here that he caught in the sky with it that is a little bit troublesome to him. And he's wondering if that's some sort of drone or if that's some sort of UFO.
100% fly. You can see through its window.
That's an interesting picture. If you put it in a Google Pixel phone, you can actually clean it up and get it clear.
Yeah, so here's the original photo. When he took the photo of the T-38, he did not see this craft in the photo. It wasn't until he went back and looked that he actually saw this portion. So being pixelated and everything, zooming in.
It could just be like a DJI Mavic drone, right? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. That's a cool picture. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought so.
There's a lot of guys on Twitter that are great at IDing aircraft. If it's an aircraft, they'll probably be able to figure it out. I'm not very good at IDing aircraft that aren't very well known for you guys.
Of course you're not. Right, Raw Dog? Right. I'm done, Tim. You go ahead now.
Cool. I was just thrilled over the fact that Politico was saying that UFOs had taken over Washington, and there were all kinds of UFOs in the headlines for a little while. It was a lot of fun until it became political, and it was all about balloons and boring things. But there was definitely a lot in the media that this kind of drew out, along with some other stories that I'm trying to bring up right now, but for some reason my tablet is taking its time, of course. Did you hear of incursions over any other parts of the United States of anything
recently
or balloon wise? Yes.
No, nothing other than somebody brought it up earlier in the chat. Not to plug somebody, but Monkey Works usually goes over all this stuff pretty well. He's got a YouTube channel, and he goes over pretty much everything that moves through the sky in the United States that has a transponder. Clearly, not everything's going to have a transponder on it, but that's a good place to start if you guys are curious about learning about most of these routine missions. The guy's pretty up to speed.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any incursions or heard anything from anybody I know, though. Otherwise, seems like a lot of this is calming down and it's turning into political play. And if there's going to be ramifications back to China or whatever. And we're half that stuff we're never going to know. There's going to put a new news cycle on, and we're going to go back to talking about Mosul, Herb, and whatever Jeremy and George and everybody else publishes. You know, that's kind of what it feels like it's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get a full answer to all this stuff, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I know that the retrieval is semi-concluded, at least on the at least Washington is reporting that the U.S. divers and salvage crews plucked all the pieces that they could from the downed aerial objects out of the Arctic Sea, right? And they were enough to fill two vessels, and of which one, and some of the pieces are just massive. And if you've seen some of the photographs, one is just one massive piece of metal that looks almost like a dumpster, or I don't know. It's just a massive chunk of metal with pipes on it. And then a great big fan on one end, or quote, it looks like a fan, but I'm sure it's a propeller of some sort. And so they're calling it, 2 vessels worth of still unspecified payloads. But
Right.
Officials are saying that they're not as large as that of the Chinese craft, but they're still the size of 3 buses, and definitely did carry surveillance equipment. And so there are remnants still being collected, but administration officials said that the latest UFO could be weather balloons, mapping instruments, or any number of non-hostile aircraft. So,
Are you referring to which crash site were you referring to this recovery occurred to?
the one in the Arctic was the one that was massive, and there was like a fan on it, and it was the size of 3 buses.
Interesting. Well, that just lends more to the fact that it seems like they were sending different. It's like we're going to send a big balloon, we're going to send a little one, we're going to send an airship, we're going to send a blimp, we're going to send a octagon. You know, it just sounds like a multifaceted test. And if you're going to do something like that, and they're expecting them to be engaged, and that's exactly what they're testing, they're going to send them all at once, because they're going to get their pee-pee slapped on this, and then they're not going to be able to run the test again, because they're going to get, the ruler is going to be in the teacher's hand, so to speak, as far as our defense and because I'm sure once they've done whatever they want, then the powers that be in the administration will come out and be real tough on TV. You guys will catch those sound bites real soon, I'm sure, about what they'll do if it happens again.
Right. Right. I just like how that in response, the U.S. quickly denied that it uses spy balloons on China. That was like the first thing that they came out and said. But also along with that, I was kind of wondering, I had asked this to Dave, and I've asked this to a few other people, but I'm just kind of wondering, we know historically that these have been floating over our United States and other countries for decades, if not at least the past 5 years intensely. Even in this article that you sent me, we know they were testing balloons over our own country. And the Pentagon admitted that in that great article that you sent to me. But what do you consider the real reason for now it being under attention and taking down of these objects? It came at a time, let's not forget, that it put off our secretary's visit to China.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be putting that visit off until public demand, and it was hitting the pages of the news, where the public outcry over wanting to know what this was. So what do you think the answer to the why now question
I think
is?
it's those 2 parts. I think it's 2 parts. I think it's one, because civilians saw it and they couldn't avoid it. I'm sure they track most of these things, even monitor some of them, jam. Like, I don't know, I'm speculating here, but I would assume, because it happens often, we go and we cruise up there and we see what's going on with it, take a look at it. If it's not a big deal, we probably let it go. I would assume so, depending on where it's at exactly. But being caught by the civilians and people going, dude, what the F? That's a big deal. And then the other part of that is the timing. Oh, excuse me, one sec. I'll be right back. One sec. Sorry.
Cool.
I think he's gonna rip one.
Yeah, I
No,
think so
it's
too.
not that. Hang on one sec.
To rip one. Dark Protocol, to answer your question, how are they going to get the wreckage from the Yukon? Most likely, the way it would be done is by Chinook, depending on how big it is, Chinook or Comanche helicopter to get into those areas. And then what they would likely do is drop the object or take the object onto a frozen lake bed where a C-130 Hercules with skis on its on its tires could land, and they would load that onto a C-130 Hercules, and then the Herc would take off in order to get there. But it all depends on how dark or heavy the terrain is. But helicopter, a long-range helicopter would be one that needs to get in there, which means it would either be the Chinook or the Comanches.
I'm back.
Cool.
Starfish
What was I
Troopers, what are you doing?
Oh, the two reasons for this. Yeah, okay, got it.
Okay,
Go ahead.
question for you. A couple questions for you here, because we are going to get going in about 5 minutes here.
I'll go ahead and finish what I was saying though. The second reason, real quick, is because they were flying at an altitude that endangers civilian air traffic. That's the second reason. But go ahead from there.
Okay, let's go to a couple questions here, starting with Jenny, who is asking, random guy, do the missiles generate heat in case it is biological?
Potentially they could. I would be an incendiary munition. And in the case of the AIM-9X, again, it's they can custom load the warhead in those. I don't know if it's 10, 20 pounds, whatever. I'm not an EOD guy, but from what I understand, they can change basically the amount of boom versus the amount of fire, or make it just a kinetic stick that they throw at something. Chat, you guys are awesome. No, I had a motion on my security camera, so like, and it was like some dude that was like wearing all black and by my front door. So I was like, I just had to take the AR-15 for a walk real quick. We're good though.
Love it. Have we seen publicly video of the takedown of the other objects?
I haven't.
Okay. So we are hearing stories, and I know that we had kind of thrown this idea around, and it's pretty, I mean, who knows? It's a little out there, but I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. What if they created it, or like maybe even sent up their own balloon and then took it down and shot a video of that to cover up something else that was spotted?
Sounds familiar. Yeah, that's not other. I would say this, not being specific about anything. I've heard stories. This is the best way to do this. I've heard stories in the history of our military where they went back and reenacted things so that tactically they would not give away that they recovered certain things or how they went about neutralizing certain things that the enemies had. So we went back and recreated the shoot down or the explosion or whatever and said, look, we did it. So that when that footage went back out or the photograph went back out to the public, you couldn't glean any discernible knowledge about what really happened because they reenacted it in such a way that it would look authentic, but it wasn't. So I've heard that, but I have no knowledge of that now happening.
Cool. And so I know we've talked briefly on the fact that this is not aliens, but at the same rate, let's consider that in the future, and I mean, obviously currently and all the time, we potentially have visitations going on. What do you think that the potential is that this is the foundation being laid now for cover stories to cover the truth of UFO, if that is a real thing?
Yeah, if you're a counterintelligence person, this is a wet dream. I mean, really, it doesn't get any better because you have a real world threat that's been authenticated by both civilians. So we know these events happened. The military, the president, everybody in between saying, yes, we know this happened as a threat. And then all they have to do is say the threat is now over, but they now have the option forever in perpetuity going forward to pull this card back out if they want to cover up something. You're absolutely right.
It's just such a massive distraction, and it's so blatant, and it's so aggressive, right? That it feels like I can't even tell now which one is covering which. Like,
Right.
Are they trying to cover the UFO story, or are they trying to cover black budget or black
And
programs?
that's exactly what they want.
And that's frustrating. And that's why I'm glad you're here. Because it does help.
Well, I'm
us
just here.
read
I'm just here to give you guys misinformation. So
That's what we expect from you. I mean, no offense,
I weave in a few truths with my lies, and you'll buy it all.
What are your thoughts, Dave? Which do you think is the cover story? And do you think that what we're seeing right now is actually not alien, but preparing us for a cover story of other things to come?
nope.
No.
Nope. Not at all. Don't see that happening at all.
I will say this though, guys, and I mentioned this before on another show. At some point, you got to hope, because you can't really do much as an individual. We collectively can hold our elected officials accountable, etc. But at some point, you got to hope. I mean, no one's invaded us, knock on wood. You know what I mean? For the most part, us in North America have it pretty good, at least America and Canada for the most part. And we've been kept pretty dang safe. Ironically, related to this, probably the biggest intelligence failures and the worst things that have happened to us here have been low-tech, low-cost intrusions. If you go back the last 40 years, 50 years, you know what I mean? Look at anything that's happened. It's fertilizer, it's airplanes, it's this. You know what I mean? Like getting our butts kicked by balloons now. Like what's good? So it's funny, ironically, low-tech seems to have been, I don't know if it's overall the weakness, but it's definitely hard to stop a dedicated small group with low tech when you're looking for the big punch. And so at some point you got to just take faith that, geez, I hope these guys just keep doing their job and my kids are still safe at school and I can still shop at Target and get my Starbucks and life goes on.
Right.
And I have that faith. And if you don't, it'll drive you nuts.
That's good advice. And I think Walter Bosley put it pretty succinctly. He said that we're all mushrooms living in the dark, living on manure. I think he nailed it. It feels like that all the time. But at the same rate, I think you do bring up a good point. And I mean, I do. So here's the thing. I mean, I have complete faith in my military and I have complete faith in my government. However, I know they're not telling me the truth. Do I think it's perhaps for my own good? Yeah. It probably is for my own good, but at the same rate, I still want the truth, right? It's so like frustrating. It's a catch-22.
That old adage where they're like, do you want to do you want to be prosperous? Do you want to be safe? And do you want the truth? You get to pick two. You can't have all three. So that's kind of the conundrum that we're encountering here.
Right. That is perfectly succinct.
All right, gentlemen. We are going to wrap things up for tonight because it is time for old Davey to get to bed. Some of us have to work in the morning.
Oh, God, I remember that.
I always work. So
I delegate.
I'll be taking my Janet bicycle work tomorrow.
I love that.
Bro.
There. But random guy, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to all the I noticed the negative comments come in after you post the show after the fact now. So at least the comments during the show are kind, and then they hammer me afterwards.
Stop reading the comments.
I love it. It's hilarious though, some of them. But anyways, I love you, chat. I'll talk to you guys later.
Right on,
all right,
IG.
Jimmy Senor, good night to you, buddy.
Good night. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you tonight to Louie ×3, Phil, Deb, Melinda, Philip, Susie B, Kira, Carl, and Thomas. Very much appreciate the love. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to get a little paranormal tomorrow night. Yeah, we are. Because our good friend Karen A. Dahlman will be back talking about Ouija boards and connecting with spirits. See you all tomorrow, everyone.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.